Is there a
The
provision
second
like that?
regular session of the 18th Congress is hereby called to order. Senator Pia Cayetano will lead the chamber in prayer.
Colleagues, let's bow our heads in prayer. To our loving Father, we praise and glorify your holy name. We continue to seek your guidance daily. You are our refuge and our strength, our source of wisdom and of hope. In Jeremiah 33, verse 6, you made your promise known to us when you said, "Behold, I will bring to it health and healing, and I will heal them and reveal to them abundance of prosperity and security." Lord, these holy words give us more courage to overcome the pandemic and to move forward into the future. You have bestowed upon us one that is prosperous and secure, where every Filipino will benefit from our initiatives to build back better. We pray, Lord, that you continue to guide us and give us wisdom in our work, and we dedicate our lives to you as public servants. All this we ask in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. The Secretary, please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara,
Present.
Binay,
Present.
Cayetano,
Present.
De Lima, De La Rosa, Drilon,
Present.
Gatchalian, Go,
Present po, always.
Gordon,
Present.
Antiveros, Lacson, Lapid, Marcos, Pacquiao,
Present.
Pangilinan,
Present.
Pimentel III,
Present.
Poe,
Present.
Recto,
Present.
Revilla Jr.,
Present. Present.
Tolentino,
Present. Present.
Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri.
Present.
Senate President Soto III is present. Wala si ano.
With 7 senators physically present and 15 senators virtually present for a total of 22, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we defer the reading of the journal of the 47th session as it's still being prepared, Mr. President, to a later hour.
All right, if there's no objection, the journal is deferred. Approval is deferred.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary will proceed with the reference of business.
Reference of business, committee reports. Committee report number 170 submitted jointly by the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance on House number 2582, introduced by Representative Abueg Zaldivar et al., entitled "An Act Increasing the Bed Capacity of the Lying-In Clinic in the Municipality of Rizal, Province of Palawan from 10 beds to 20 beds, upgrading its service facilities and professional healthcare services, authorizing the increase of its medical personnel and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval with amendments." Sponsor Senator Go.
The calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 171 submitted jointly by the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance on House number 5870, introduced by Representative Gonzales et al., entitled "An Act Establishing a 300-Bed Capacity Tertiary Training and General Hospital in Barangay Mauay, City of Mandaluyong, to be known as the Senate President Neptali A. Gonzales General Hospital, and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval with amendments." Sponsor Senator Go.
The calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 172 submitted jointly by the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance on House number 6498, introduced by Representative Erigel et al., entitled "An Act Increasing the Bed Capacity of the Naguilian District Hospital in the Municipality of Naguilian, Province of La Union from 25 beds to 50 beds and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval with amendments, taking into consideration Senate number 1768. Sponsor Senator Go.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 173 submitted jointly by the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance on House number 6727, introduced by Representative Sabellan et al., entitled "An Act Increasing the Bed Capacity of the Sinait District Hospital in Sinait, Ilocos Sur from 25 beds to 100 beds and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval with amendments, taking into consideration Senate number 1383. Sponsor Senator Go.
To To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report number 174, submitted jointly by the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance on House number 6728, introduced by Representative Suntay et al., entitled An Act Increasing the Bed Capacity of East Avenue Medical Center in Barangay Diliman, Quezon City from 600 to 1,000 beds and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval without amendment, taking into consideration Senate numbers 1291 and 1609, sponsor Senator Go.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report number 175, submitted jointly by the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance on House number 6729, introduced by Representatives Eriguel and Swansing, entitled An Act Increasing the Bed Capacity of Rosario District Hospital, the Municipality of Rosario, Province of La Union, from 25 to 50 beds and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval with amendments, taking into consideration Senate number 1769, sponsor Senator Go.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report number 176, submitted jointly by the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance on House number 6730, introduced by Representative Waminal et al., entitled An Act Increasing the Bed Capacity of the Mayor Hilarion A. Ramiro Senior Medical Center in the Province of Misamis Occidental from 500 to 1,000 beds, upgrading its professional healthcare services and facilities, authorizing the increase of its medical personnel and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval with amendments, taking into consideration Senate number 1696, sponsor Senator Go.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report number 177, submitted jointly by the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance on House number 6753, introduced by Representative Unabia, entitled An Act Converting the Medina Extension Hospital in the Municipality of Medina, Province of Misamis Oriental, into a general hospital to be known as the First Misamis Oriental General Hospital and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval with amendments, sponsor Senator Go.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report number 178, submitted jointly by the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance on House number 6849, introduced by Representative Yap, an act increasing the bed capacity of the Benguet General Hospital, the Municipality of La Trinidad, Province of Benguet, from 200 to 400 beds, placing the hospital under the direct supervision and control of the Department of Health and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval with amendments, sponsor Senator Go.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report number 179, submitted jointly by the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance on House number 6850, introduced by Representative Estrella et al., entitled An Act Establishing a General Hospital, the Municipality of Rosales, Province of Pangasinan, to be known as the Eastern Pangasinan Regional Medical and Trauma Center and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval with amendments, taking into consideration Senate number 1654, sponsor Senator Go.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report number 180, submitted jointly by the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance on House number 6971, introduced by Representative Romualdez et al., entitled An Act upgrading its professional healthcare services and facilities, authorizing the increase of its medical personnel and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval without amendment, taking into consideration Senate number 1584, sponsor Senator Go.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report number 181, submitted jointly by the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance on House number 6972, introduced by Representatives Romualdez and Romualdez, entitled An Act Renaming the Eastern Visayas Regional Medical Center in the City of Tacloban, Province of Leyte into Eastern Visayas Medical Center, increasing its bed capacity from 500 to 1,500 beds and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval with amendments, taking into consideration Senate number 1378, sponsor Senator Go.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report number 182, submitted jointly by the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance on House number 7321, introduced by Representative Bautista Bandigan et al., entitled An Act Establishing a General Hospital in Barangay Lacaron, Municipality of Malita, Province of Davao Occidental, to be known as the Davao Occidental General Hospital and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval without amendment, taking into consideration Senate number 1616, sponsor Senator Go.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report number 183, submitted jointly by the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance on House number 7322, introduced by Representatives Dimaporo and Ebcas, entitled An Act Upgrading the Lanao del Norte Provincial Hospital, located in the Municipality of Baroy, Lanao del Norte, into a regional medical center to be known as the Lanao del Norte Regional Medical Center and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval with amendments, taking into consideration Senate number 1874, sponsor Senator Go.
The calendar for ordinary business.
Additional reference.
There is additional reference of business.
Bills on first reading, Senate number 2049, an act strengthening and modernizing the Warehouse Receipts Law of the Philippines, repealing Act number 2137 of the Warehouse Receipts Law and other related purposes, introduced by Senator Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Trade and Finance.
Senate number 2050, an act establishing a moratorium on aging out of foster care during the state of public health emergency due to the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic and for 6 months thereafter, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 10165, otherwise known as the Foster Care Act of 2012, introduced by Senator Lapid.
Referred to the Committees on Women and Social Justice.
Senate number 2051, an act extending the period of availment of the estate tax amnesty, amending for the purpose Republic Act 11213, otherwise known as the Tax Amnesty Act, introduced by Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
Senate number 2052, an act regulating polls, poll attachments, and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Lapid.
To the Committees on Public Services and Finance.
Senate number 2053, an act providing free hemodialysis, peritoneal dialysis, and other Department of Health approved dialysis procedures to all senior citizens, introduced by Senator Ontiveros.
To the Committees on Health and Social Justice and Finance.
Senate number 2054, an act declaring April 7 of every year as Barangay Health and Nutrition Workers Day, introduced by Senator Ontiveros.
To the Committees on Health and Local Government.
Senate number 2055, an act declaring the province of Agusan del Sur as the home of the Golden Tara, introduced by Senator Binay.
To the Committees on Basic Education and Tourism.
Resolutions, PS Resolution number 649, resolution directing the Senate Committee on Energy to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the country's energy transition plan or lack thereof in relation to the Department of Energy's moratorium on greenfield coal power plants with the end in view of developing and ensuring an equitable, secure, and sustainable energy transition, introduced by Senator Gatchalian.
To the Committee on Energy.
PS Resolution number 650, resolution directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the alarming growth of adolescent pregnancies in the country, introduced by Senator Binay.
To the Committee on Women and Children.
PS Resolution number 651, resolution urging the Committees on Foreign Relations, Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship and other appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the failure of the country's permanent representative to the WTO to secure the speedy and full implementation of the favorable decisions from the WTO compliance panel vis-a-vis discriminatory measures against Philippine exports to Thailand, with the objective of identifying the policy interventions necessary to protect the Philippine sovereign rights and interests in the international trade community, introduced by Senator Ontiveros.
To the Committees on Foreign Relations and Trade.
PS Resolution number 652, resolution expressing the sense of the Senate of the Philippines in acknowledging Lapu-Lapu as a sentinel of freedom who courageously fought to protect his native land and led the victory at Mactan during the first circumnavigation of the world, introduced by Senator Gordon.
To the Committee on Rules.
Committee report number 184, submitted by the Committee on Public Services on PS Resolution number 634, introduced by Senator Poe, entitled Resolution Directing the Senate Committee on Public Services to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the implementation of Department of Transportation DOTR Department Order number 2018-019 and Land Transportation Office LTO Memorandum Circular number 2018-2158 and all related issuances with the end in view of addressing the concerns of motorists regarding the operations of private motor vehicle inspection centers and ultimately improving the motor vehicle inspection system in the country. And PS Resolution number 638, introduced by Senator Recto, resolution urging the Department of Transportation DOTR and the Land Transportation Office LTO to suspend the operation of private motor vehicle inspection centers until a comprehensive public consultation is conducted with the end in view of promoting transparency to stakeholders and the public, forging programs with social acceptability and ensuring public safety. And PS Resolution number 641, introduced by Senator De Lima, entitled Resolution urging the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the alleged precipitous and hasty implementation of the private motor vehicle inspection center project of the Land Transportation Office LTO and Department of Transportation DOTR, following criticisms and allegations of lack of transparency and appropriate consultation of its major stakeholders in its planning and implementation, leading to the fears of our citizens being deprived their right to use their vehicles without due process, recommending the adoption of the recommendations contained herein and their immediate implementation. Sponsor, Senator Poe.
To the calendar for ordinary business. Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, before we take up our matters on the agenda. Just a bit of good news. We're in receipt of the bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1855 and House Bill number 5925. This is an act making the position of cooperative development officers mandatory in the municipal, city, and provincial levels. I move, Mr. President, with the permission of the body, may I be recognized as the President to sponsor the measure?
Yes, you may proceed.
Thank you, my dear colleagues and our Senate President. Mr. President, on behalf of the Senate panel to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1855 and House Bill number 5925, an act making the position of cooperative development officers mandatory in municipal, city, and provincial levels,
Okay.
amending for the purpose Republic Act number 7160, otherwise known as the Local Government Code of 1991, as amended. I have the honor to report to the body the bicameral committee report as on the reconciled bill. Instead of reading the joint explanatory statement of the bicameral report, if I may be allowed to present the highlights of the reconciled bill and the joint explanation be inserted as considered read into the record. Mr. President, your bicameral conference committee came up with a version that responds to the clamor of the cooperative sector, which has long hoped for the establishment of a mandatory cooperatives development officer across all LGUs, while also being sensitive to the plea of our LGUs regarding their budget constraints. At the onset, I would like to inform the body that the Senate version of the bill was adopted as the working draft. For cities and municipalities, we amended the Local Government Code of 1991 to make mandatory the position of the CDA, or the Cooperative Development Officer, CDO rather. A city or municipality as well has the option to either appoint a full-fledged CDO or merge such position concurrent to an existing position or official in a related office, unit, department in the city or municipal government. Should the city or municipality opt to appoint a full-fledged CDO, the city or municipality has the option to set the rank, remuneration, and other emoluments of the city and municipal CDO subject to existing laws, rules, and regulations. In the provincial level, we made it mandatory to appoint a full-fledged provincial CDO, but the province has the option to set the rank, remuneration, and other emoluments of the provincial CDO, again subject to existing laws, rules, and regulations. By full-fledged, we mean having attained a complete status or fully developed position or office. We also strengthen the qualifications and powers and duties of a CDO, or Cooperative Development Officer, under Section 17, Section 487 of the Local Government Code, to include taking the lead in identifying groups, sectors, or communities that can be organized into co-ops, providing assistance to prospective cooperatives in the conduct of required pre-registration seminars or pre-membership education seminars and the preparation of required documents for registration, providing technical and other forms of assistance to duly registered cooperatives in partnership with the CDA, DTI, and other government agencies, cooperative unions, federations, the academe, and other private organizations, improving linkages of cooperatives and cooperative unions and federations in the academe, assisting cooperatives in the development and implementation of risk management plans, business continuity plans, and management. Umaasa po tayo na itong BICAM version ng bill ay makakatulong sa ating co-op sector, pati na rin sa ating mga LGUs. Talagang tinabaho po natin itong batas para mapalakas natin ang ating cooperative sector, lalo na ngayon sa gitna tayo ng isang COVID-19 pandemic with recovery efforts. Malaki po ang magiging papel ng ating mga co-op sa ating economic recovery dahil tinutulungan po natin ang ating mga co-op na mabigyan ng trabaho, kabuhayan at seguridad ang ating mga mamamayan. Gaya po ng aking laging sinasabi, cooperativism is helping the Filipinos help themselves. With this bill, we will help our cooperatives so they can better help our people. In the same spirit of cooperativism, so many people helped us with this bill, Mr. President. First of all, we have to thank Senator Francis Tolentino, the chair of the Committee on Local Government, for letting this representation spearhead the subcommittee on the CDO bills. And of course, we are grateful to all the help we got from the House Committee on Cooperative Development, headed by the former chair, Congressman Ben Canama, and the present chair, Congressman Presley De Jesus, as well as all the congressmen who were members of the BICAM. We'd also like to thank the BICAM panel members for a very fruitful interactive BICAM meeting, namely our very own Senate Cooperative Committee Vice Chair, Senator Risa Ontiveros, as well as Senator Amy Marcos, Senator Wing Gatchalian, who both brought valuable insights in their experiences under the LGU when they were once local government executives, and also to Senator Joel Villanueva. And I must say that the Senate panel was complete during the BICAM meeting. We'd also like to thank LCDOP, headed by Manang Celia Atienza, for their support of the Senate version and for voicing feedback from the sector itself. And from the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines and the different leagues of LGUs, the League of Provinces of the Philippines, Leagues of Cities and Municipalities for the inputs and support of the bill. We also have to thank the DILG, the DOF's Bureau of Local Government Finance, and the Cooperative Development Authority for the data they provided, which helped shape the bill, hopefully into law in this couple of weeks. And from the academe, we'd like to thank Professor Ellen Mantalaba for her valuable contributions. Mr. President, I thank everyone who supported us in the bill, and I move for the approval and ratification of the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1855 and House Bill number 5925, and that the joint explanatory statement conference committee report inserted, considered read into the records. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I so move.
All right, any objection? Hearing none, the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill 1855 and House Bill 5925 is hereby adopted and ratified.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. President. Next item on the agenda, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
May we recognize our colleagues, the one on the floor, maybe we can give credence to the ones on the floor.
Senator
Joel Villanueva
Risa Ontiveros is
and
recognized.
Risa Ontiveros, Mr. President. Yes.
thank you, Mr. President. Bilang isa sa mga author, I thank our committee chairs, Senator Francis Tolentino, and my Senate Committee on Cooperatives chairs, Majority Leader Senator Mig Zubiri, and our counterparts in the House of Representatives, led by Representative Presley De Jesus, Ben Canama, and other members of the House Committee on Cooperatives Development sa matagumpay na pagtutulungan upang maisabatas ang pagtatalaga ng mga local cooperatives development officers sa ating mga probinsya, lungsod at munisipyo. Sa pamamagitan ng batas na ito, umaasa tayong matutugunan ang pangangailangan ng ating mga lokal na kooperatiba para sa institutional support. Hindi lamang sa national at regional levels na ginagampanan ngayon ng Cooperatives Development Authority, katuwang ang Department of Trade and Industry, kundi maging sa local governments. Umaasa po akong ang ating mga local government units ay makapagtatalaga na ng mga permanenteng local cooperatives development officers. At kung kakayanin ng kanilang budget at kung kakailanganin, sana isang ganap na local co-ops development office upang makatulong sa pagpapalakas ng mga lokal na kooperatiba sa kanilang mga nasasakupan. Hangad ko pa po na ang ating mga itatalagang local co-ops development officers ay hindi lamang gagabay sa pag-oorganisa, pagpapalakas at pagpapaunlad ng ating mga kooperatiba, kundi maging tulay din sa pagpapalawak at pagpapalalim ng ugnayan ng mga kooperatiba sa mga pambansang unyon o federasyon ng kooperatiba, sa iba't ibang sangay ng national government, sa iba't ibang tanggapan sa loob ng LGU, at maging sa ating mga academic community at private sectors upang mas lalo nitong magampanan ang kanilang shared values and mission na iangat ang kalidad ng buhay ng ating mga kababayan, lalo na ang mahihirap. Ito pong pagsasabatas na ito ng local co-ops development officers ay panibagong instrumento ng cooperatives movement tungo sa sama-samang tulungan at bayanihan para sa kaunlaran, lalo na sa panahon ng ating sama-samang pagharap at pagbangon laban sa pandemya ng COVID-19. Marami pong salamat, Mr. President, at mabuhay po ang kilusang kooperatiba sa panibagong tagumpay na ito. Salamat po.
Mr. President.
Senator Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is just a very short manifestation. We just like to spread into the records our sincerest thanks and appreciation to our distinguished Majority Floor Leader, who is perhaps the most hardworking and most passionate senator when it comes to looking after our cooperatives, especially in the countryside. We are very happy to co-author this particular measure as one of living testimony, Mr. President, sa mga magagandang nagagawa at naidudulot ng ating mga kooperatiba, lalong-lalo na sa aming probinsya sa Bulacan at sa rehiyon ng Central Luzon. And this measure would definitely strengthen and empower our cooperatives and help our people, especially in this very, very trying time. So again, isang pagpupugay po sa buong Senado, lalo na sa ating kasamahan, Senator Mig Subiri, sa kanyang passion to really push this very important landmark legislation. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo. Mabuhay ang Senado, mabuhay ang mga kooperatiba.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Maraming salamat kay Senator Joel. At Mr. President, gusto ko rin purihin ang ating mga kasamahan na halos lahat naman po ng ating membro sa Senado ay pro-cooperatives. But I'd like to make special mention. One is Senator Joel Villanueva, whose great province of Bulacan is one of the biggest producer of great cooperatives. Talagang magagaling pong kooperatiba nila doon. And as I mentioned, my BICAM members earlier, we'd like to make special mention to our Mama Bear, because our Mama Bear, Ma'am Cynthia Villar, has what we call the Sipag Villar Awards, and they have actually, and I'd like to put this on record, and I'd like to make special thanks to her because nawala po yung Land Bank Gawad Pitak Award na binibigay ng Land Bank. Pinalitan naman po ni Ma'am Cynthia under her Sipag Awards. So to Ma'am Cynthia, thank you very much. Natutuwa po ang cooperative movement that you recognize their efforts dahil nawalan po sila ng awards nung nawala po yung Land Bank Award. So I'd like to put special mention on that also. They're very, very happy with that. And of course, to our colleagues from the different parts of the Philippines who also support their cooperatives, maraming salamat po. This is a great step. Having a designated cooperative development officer for all the LGUs all across the country is a great step in assisting cooperativism and pushing for that movement all around the country. So thank you very much once again, Mr. President. And moving forward to our agenda, we have, Mr. President, for interpellation, I move that we resume consideration, Mr. President, Senate Bill number 1741 under Committee Report number 163. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Consideration of the measure is in order.
We'd like to recognize the sponsor, Mr. President. I believe that you will need to change leadership or the presiding officer as
Yes,
to interpolate.
yes, Mr. President. Yes, Your Honor. We recognize Senator Cynthia Villar, the sponsor, and we ask that Senator Ping Lacson ascend to the rostrum.
Thank you. So that the Senate President may interpolate the measure. Thank you, Mr. President.
The sponsor of the measure is Senator Cynthia Villar is recognized, and to interpolate the Senate President, Senator Vicente Tito Soto III.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the distinguished lady from Las Piñas yield to some questions that are brought up by some sectors that brought their concerns to this representation? Will the distinguished lady yield to some questions, please?
Senator Villar, I think
You have to
you're
unmute,
on mute.
please. Do you hear me now?
Yes, yes, madam.
Okay. It's my pleasure to answer the questions of our Senate President.
Thank you. At the outset, allow me to place on record that I have nothing against the bill. I have no personal issues on the bill, except that there were some sectors and some provincial leaders that brought their concerns to this representation, and therefore it is only fitting that I bring it up so that it can be clarified, it can be answered by the sponsor, and we will be able to give a chance to them that they be heard. So let me start by asking first on the issue of the Senate Bill 1741. Generally, what are the bases used in determining which particular city or province or region in the country shall be declared as capital of any particular product?
Mr. President, I think the basis would be their success in producing the product. I haven't heard of a place where a place produce 80% of all the cacao production in the whole country, and it is the Davao region. I've been chairman of the Committee on Agriculture for 7 years, 8 years, but I've never seen a place like this that can produce 80% of the cacao production in a region. And that is the Davao region. And they have won many international awards for doing that. So this bill is just a one-page bill. It is a recognition of what they have done, and there's no other provision in the bill except to recognize them and for them to serve as an inspiration to other farmers and their co-op and association, to other LGUs, to the private sector in other places, and of course, an inspiration also to the Department of Agriculture, the National High Value Program of DA, and the PCA, because cacao is intercropping to coconut. And it is a provision of our cocoa bill that 10% of the budget of the cocoa bill will go to intercropping, because that would increase the income of farmers in the countryside, and there are 3.5 million coconut farmers in the Philippines.
All right. Then you are particularly talking about the region, because the
region
bill
is known for cacao, and the city is known for their chocolate processing, and they are award-winning in the world. Okay.
Yes, but the title of your bill is an act declaring the city of Davao.
No, the bill has been
capital of the Philippines.
Okay. Mr. President, the bill has been revised as such, declaring the Davao City as the chocolate capital of the Philippines and the whole Davao region as the cacao capital of the Philippines.
You will introduce that amendment. It has not been revised yet.
No, it's in the committee report.
Yes, that's why. You will introduce it during the period of amendments, I suppose.
Yeah.
No? All right?
That is the final title. I cannot understand it, but that is the final title of my committee report. Yeah.
That is the final, that is the title that you will propose.
Yes, yes.
And perhaps after my interpellations, you will probably retain, or the suggestion would probably be Davao region.
Davao
The
region.
city of Davao itself. Well,
But for your information, Senate President, the city of Davao is still the biggest producer of cacao in the Philippines, except that all the provinces of the Davao region produce also cacao. But the biggest one is the city of Davao. It produces 2,290 metric tons of cacao out of the total production of the Philippines na 8,378, and that is 27% of all the production in the Philippines, and that is 79% of and the whole Davao region produces 79% of the total production in the Philippines with 6,703 metric tons. So it's still the Davao City, but we want to include the Davao region because they are all producers of cacao and they produce 79% of all the cacao in the Philippines. And the city of Davao, we want it to be known as the chocolate capital because their chocolate is award-winning in the world. O, yung Malagos, yung Auro, yung maraming award-winning brands from Davao. Okay.
All right. Allow me to continue now. No, you mentioned in your sponsorship speech that a 2017 data from the Philippine Statistics Authority stating that 79% of the annual cacao production in the country was from the Davao region, as you are manifesting now. And that is one of the basis of your committee
Yes.
in considering designating the Davao region on not only the Davao City as the chocolate and cacao capital of the Philippines. Is there a more updated data like 2019?
It's the PSA data, but that is what we use because usually there's no big difference. Usually mga 1%, 2%, 3%. If you look at the PSA data, wala namang biglang tumataas na production. So I would say that that is a very good signal of how production is.
All right. I will not submit for the record. I'll just give you a copy of a letter that was questioning the PSA, but nevertheless, it's okay. Now, what agencies and organizations were invited during your public or committee hearing?
Lahat naman yan,
what are the agencies and organizations invited?
It says here, usually we invite the private sector, we invite the government sector, we invite the local government units, and lahat sila nagbibigay ng opinion. Okay? And it's only ngayong bandang huli nakita namin yung stand ng Philippine Cacao Industry Council. Oo. Kasi dito merong isinabmit ang USEC for high value crop na stand nila because they are ang DA is co-chairman of the Philippine Cacao Industry Council. Okay?
All right.
And so they are co-chairman. Okay, and they submitted here kasi nga sinabi ko sa kanila na yung Philippine Cacao Council nagko-complain, and this is how they explained it. They said that at the outset, it should be emphasized that the Department of Agriculture, being designated as co-chairperson of the Philippine Cacao Industry Council under the Philippine Cacao Industry Roadmap, was not present nor was advised on the matter of the opposition to the subject House and Senate bills. Contrary to the claim that the PCIC was not consulted, the records of Congress would prove that the representative of the PCIC and other industry stakeholders were present during the public hearing for the proposed law, wherein the PCIC, it's the
Your Honor, who said that?
Undersecretary for High Value Crop of the Department of Agriculture, because they are co-chairman.
What's his or her name?
It's Yusek Lavinia.
All right, I'm submitting into the records of the Senate now the letter from the PCIC.
Yeah.
So they were not, according to the PCIC, allow me, Madam Chairperson. According to the PCIC, the Philippine Cacao Industry Council PCIC, which was an agency created by the DA and the DTI and other agencies, no? They were not invited as resource persons to the committee hearing. And they are the primary agency tasked to spearhead the development of the cacao industry. According
You
to them,
know-
they were not invited during the hearing. Now, who is lying? The USEC or the PCIC?
Can you finish? Can I finish the statement of the because they are co-chairman of the PCIC. So they have a right to say because it should not have been decided without them being a co-chairman, and they were the ones together with they were the ones who created this council from the roadmap of the cacao industry, which in turn was made by the Region 11 Department of Agriculture, Department of Trade and Industry, and SIDAMI, that is the private sector association of Mindanao farmers, cocoa farmers. Sila yung talagang tumulong dito. Sila din ang gumawa niyang roadmap at sila din ang on the roadmap, yan ang nag-create ng PCIC. Unfortunately, the head of PCIC now is not coming from Davao. It's coming from the Visayas. Oo. Pero ito ang sinabi nila na nangyari. Can I please finish reading this? Contrary to the claim that the PCIC was not consulted, the records of Congress would prove that representatives of the PCIC and other industry stakeholders were present during the public hearings for the proposed law, wherein the PCIC expressed its full support on the passage of the bill. Moreover, during the said public hearings to Congress, not one from any private stakeholders expressed any opposition.
Who is the signatory to that particular?
Yusek Lavinia of the National High Value Crop Program, which
Okay, Yusek Lavinia,
cacao belongs. Cacao kasi is a high value crop. Kaya yung development ng high value crop under the National High Value Crop Program. At ang head niyan is si Yusek Lavinia, and there is another because I told them how come this happened, and there is another position paper from the Philippine Council for Agriculture and Fisheries sent to me by Secretary Dar, and they answered all the questions of the Philippine Cacao Industry Council. And I'm willing to give the Senate President a copy of all this position paper because when I did this, I studied very well. And I thought that this is just a recognition. There is no provision in the bill that we will give special financial assistance to Davao and Davao region. You know, I'm so convinced. I've been to Davao several times. I've met these people, the private sector in the cacao industry, and I'm sure many senators have met them. You really have to admire them for what they have done to the cacao industry. And I think this is an example wherein the LGU and the private sector and the Association of Cacao Farmers did their work to make them produce 80% of cacao in their region. It's seldom done. And I think there will be more bills coming here that will recognize places who made good in one agricultural crop like abaca for Catanduanes and egg for San Jose, Batangas. And I think if we cannot give them all the financial assistance to make their industry successful, at least we would give them the recognition. Libre naman yung recognition. Why can't we not give the recognition for doing a very good job in their particular product? Ako kung hindi natin mabigay ang pera, bigay naman natin yung recognition sa kanila for that they have done very good. And if ever in the future some probinsya or LGU will succeed more than Davao, then we amend the law and we make them the cacao capital. There's nothing wrong with that. If somebody in the future will succeed more than what Davao has achieved, then we amend the law and we give them the recognition.
Well, we will get to that, Madam Chairperson. We will get to that, Your Honor, Mr. President, because Davao has already been recognized by a executive action by the Department of Agriculture. So we will get to that. Let me just now continue with the points that I'm raising. And again, we have to give them the chance. That's why kaya ko po sila dinadala dito at pinag-uusapan dito sapagkat ito'y nilapit nila sa atin. At pagka hindi natin pinansin, baka sabihin binaliwala lahat yung
Yeah, I understand that. That's why
So who will we believe now? Yusek Labinya or the chairperson, the national chairperson of the Philippine Cacao Industry Council? The letter I submit here that they were not invited. Their comments were not asked for and they were not invited. Now, they are not against it, ha? Dapat inimbita sila. Kahit hindi sila payag, let's just
No, but-
record certain points that that we would like to air now. Yun lang po ang atin, ano? So,
you know,
we received statements of opposition from the PCIC and the Provincial Cacao Industry Cluster Zamboanga del Norte, raising some relevant points. One of the points is that the committee failed to consult other stakeholders, according to them. All right. Now, we have already received the comment of the sponsor on this, ano? So, may we know why they were not invited, considering the council plays a major role?
no,
Bakit
we,
yung Yusek lang ang nagsalita para sa kanila and the national
No.
chairperson or representatives of the council were not invited?
I asked for their position paper because I was so surprised. Because in every committee hearing that we do, we invite everybody. Now, if they don't want to attend, what can we do with that? But we invite everybody. You've seen how I conduct committee hearing. We invite everybody. We invite the private sector. We invite the government sector. We invite the local government units. We invite everybody. Kanina nga, nag-hearing ako sa Abaca na andun lahat sila. Both the private sector and the government sector and the LGUs. Nag-hearing din kami. Dalawa yung hearing namin kanina, Cacao and egg. Naandun sila lahat. Ngayon, kung hindi sila dumating, we cannot wait for them. You know, I'm so surprised with this PCIC because co-chairman ng agriculture. Co-chairman ng agriculture
Correct,
dyan. Hindi naman siya ang chairman dyan, co-chairman. Ang government kasali dyan sa Philippine Cacao Industry Council. Hindi lang private sector yan.
This is the reason that is being given by your committee secretary. Hindi na raw inimbita kasi nando naman daw yung DA. Now, we
Hindi,
also have a
siguro.
resolution
Hindi mo
here.
sabi noon. Lahat
The
iniimbita.
resolution here,
I
so-
disagree with that. I disagree with
It's a
that.
resolution here from the Provincial Cacao Industry Cluster of Zamboanga del Norte.
Okay.
And they are also strongly opposing the House bill because they were not consulted. Ganun lang kasimple. Kung pinagtatawag sila, siguro hindi natin makarinig itong mga complaints na to.
Oh.
Now, to continue,
Oh.
at we
Can
understand
I
already
read,
that what you have been,
Yeah.
we already understand what you have
Tawagan mo nga si
saying.
Reggie. Bakit hindi ko consult? Lahat ko consult.
Now, there are other companies located in different localities that have similarly placed the Philippines in the competitive advantage on cacao production, and they put our country on the map in this industry. Itong yung punto nila, like the Auro chocolate based
Can I answer about the
the
Auro?
biggest fine chocolate producer in the country, which received
Auro.
numerous awards in 2018 all the way to 2020 from the Academy of Chocolate, International Chocolate Awards and Great Taste 2020 Awards to Ginto Chocolate based in Tagbilaran, which won an award from the International Chocolate Awards in 2019. And the Manila-based Trio and Pilot Chocolates, which received awards from International Chocolate Awards and Great Taste Awards. Now, were these areas considered also as chocolate in cacao capital of the Philippines? I'm sure it was not.
No.
Why was Laguna, Tagbilaran, Manila?
No, the one in Laguna, Auro, source all its cacao from Davao. Oh, the Auro. sa Laguna lang yung processing center nila, pero lahat ng cacao nila galing sa Davao. And when I presented you the bill, I enumerated all the brands of chocolate. And 10 of them comes from Davao. Okay? 2 sa Jensan, 1 sa Abusan Sur, 2 sa Negros Occidental, 1 sa Calbayog City, 1 sa Bohol, 1 sa Cebu, 1 sa Quezon, and 2 sa Batangas. So, miski dun sa number of chocolate, Davao source artisanal brands, 10 ang galing sa Davao, and the rest ay all over the Philippines. Sabi ni Secretary ni Senator Bato na 80%, 79% galing sa Davao, 10% ang galing sa 11% ang galing sa Luzon, 3% galing sa Luzon is 10% galing sa rest of Mindanao, 8% galing sa Luzon, 3% galing sa Visayas, and 79% galing sa Davao region. Oo, miski doon sa brand, 10 brands comes from Davao, and then the rest, yung 11 brands comes from everywhere. So, miski sa brand ng chocolate, majority galing sa Davao.
Okay.
And
what would be
galing sa Davao ang kanilang raw materials, ginagawa lang sa Laguna yung kanilang chocolate.
All right. So what would be the effect now of the bill? What are the benefits?
Walang benefit. It's just a recognition.
Financial, technical, or other necessary assistance from the government by virtue of this bill. Ano ba ang
It's a one-page bill. It's just a recognition and to serve as an inspiration. Wala nang nakasulat sa bill. Wala nang nakasulat sa bill. Just a recognition. Sabi ko nga, libre naman yung recognition. Napakadaling ibigay. Ibigay na natin kasi 80% galing sa kanila and they did it on their own. I can assure you, I've been watching the Department of Agriculture. This job was done by the locals. And we have to recognize them for that. Oh.
It's a recognition. De maganda po kung resolution, wala akong kaproblema ito. Because what we're saying here is that some quarters are saying it might be a disadvantage to the rest of the regions para na-undermine ng gobyerno yung thrust to develop cacao industry sa kanila kasi talagang mapapako na lang doon. Kung wala mga benefits at sa financial assistance na matatanggap dito.
Wala po.
According to the September 8, 2020 report of the Department of Agriculture, they have already officially named Davao City as the cacao capital of the Philippines. So what does this declaration entail? Does it bestow some benefits? Wala naman eh.
Wala.
Oh,
Mr. Senate President, this was passed by Congress. I was saying, if this was passed by Congress, nakakahiya namang hindi natin to ipasa. Yun lang ang ano ko kasi pumasa na to sa Kongreso eh.
Marami tayo nakapinding.
Tayo naman, baka sabihin naman galit tayo sa Davao kasi tayo ayaw natin ipasa yung bill. Yun lang naman ang ano ko na idinala to ng Congress sa atin. The House of Representatives, nakakahiya namang ayaw natin ipasa ang bill at gagawa tayo ng resolution. Ako, okay lang sa akin if you want that, but that's my only concern. Anyway, wala namang nilagay dito na it's just a recognition of Davao as the region, as the cacao capital of the Philippines. Totoo naman na talagang sila yung magaling. Wala naman tayong magagawa doon. Nahiya lang ako na pinasa to ng House of Representatives tapos tayo, magpa-file tayo ng resolution. Parang hindi yata magandang tingnan.
All right. Can you cite an existing law declaring a city or a province as capital?
No, there are two in my committee. Pinasa din sa Kongreso, declaring San Jose, Batangas as the egg capital of the Philippines, and another one declaring Catanduanes as the Abaca capital of the Philippines, and they produce only what do you call this 30%, and this is
Kasi,
80%.
alright.
Oo. Nasa
that is
hinir
pending-
ko na po kanina. Ibinasa
That is
na rin po
pending
ng
in-
Kongreso.
That is pending in the House of Representatives.
No, it has been passed
Now-
by the House of Representatives. It's now in my committee in the Senate. It was referred
Alright,
to
so
me.
it's pending in the House Committee of the Senate. Now, for example, there is no law declaring Davao Oriental as the coconut capital of the Philippines, but it is. Oh, Guimaras as the mango capital of the Philippines, but it is. There is no law.
Because their
Ilagan City,
congressman did not
Isabela, is
file.
corn capital of the Philippines. Do we require a legislation for all of this?
No, if the congressman will file and he can pass it in the House, then we accept it in the Senate and then we hear it. You know.
Hindi naman kaya kasi kung
Ako naman
deklarasyon
kasi,
lang po. Ano? Yes.
Senate President, ako lang, alam mo, I've been in the agriculture. Medyo hirap na hirap tayo tulungan yung mga farmers natin. Ngayon, kung they made good, maybe ibigay na lang natin ng recognition. Kesa naman, hindi natin sila bigyan ng recognition. Kasi kung nare-recognize sila, maybe other people will do their best also to get a recognition.
Wala ho problema yung recognition. As a matter of fact, at the outset, I told you I have nothing
Yeah,
against this. Yung mga recognition. At sinasabi lang natin dito, like for example, and I hope I get the answer directly, isn't this a violative of the Equal Protection Clause in the
No.
Constitution? Because recognition, yung iba nare-recognize din, ito magiging batas. Ano? Are we discriminating against the many cacao planters
No,
and chocolate producers in the other regions in the country? Dahil porque maliit lang sila, eh parang nadi-disadvantage sila. Hindi kaya ganon?
No, the help of the government will be for everybody. This is just a recognition of a job well done. And maybe if they see that people will be recognized for a job well done, maybe they will do better in the future, so they will be recognized. I mean, that's my feeling in this, because I have been in the agriculture for so long, and what we cannot give in terms of programs to them, maybe we can give them in terms of recognition to job well done. Ako, I'm amazed. Like this San Jose, Batangas, isang maliit na bayan sa produces 30% of all the egg in the Philippines. But that's a big accomplishment. I mean, tapos in addition, nagmamanufacture pa sila ng egg product for processing in case may oversupply sila ng egg. Ginagawa nilang yung meron silang liquid egg, meron silang egg powder, meron silang nakakatuwa eh. I'm so amazed by what they have done. Oo. And I learned so many things from them when I hear what they have done with regards to this. So ako, Senate President, gusto ko lang po na and dito po sinabi na yung ating pong chairman ng Philippine Cacao Industry Council, nagbibigay na po sila. She only took over just recently after the hearing. We held public hearing in October. She was appointed in December.
Were they invited in October?
Yeah, Mr. Walter Tour, the previous head during the time of the hearing, attended the hearing. Yeah, it's Walter Tour is very active in Sidami. Sidami is the Cacao Industry Association of Mindanao. Sidami.
All right. I personally believe that there will be a very good or significant impact in the country's chocolate and cacao industry with this legislation, no? Ha?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, ang sinasabi nila, no, the primary agency tasked to spearhead the development of the cacao industry, the PCIC, has been taken out of the picture. They were never
No.
consulted according to them. Sila yung nakaupo ngayon.
Walter, Mr. Walter
they
Tur
have
was
raised
there.
very relevant and valid points. So they are expressing, and I have placed into the records these resolutions that come from them, that they have a unanimous view from some of the other regions, except of course Region 11, that hopefully maging beneficial din sa kanila. So I hope that the committee will hear the side of the PCIC before we approve this bill. Yun ang magandang sana'y magkaroon kayo ng dialogue so that it will not appear that we are giving undue advantage to others. Ano? So, nagreklamo sila. Isa sa mga nagrereklamo, by the way, that caught my attention was Cebu. Ano? You know very well that I come from Cebu.
Yeah, I know. That's why I know you will ask
families.
this question. Yes.
Although we have families in Davao, the first vice governor of Davao, the vice governor of Vicente Duterte is Noli Soto, my first cousin. So we are
Mr.
really connected also.
Duterte
But
came from
if
Cebu.
If Cebu complains, we listen. Ganun yun eh, di ba? Kaya yun lang. So I hope you conduct a dialogue with the PCIC or have your committee secretary or some people talk to them, because the DA has already declared through an executive issuance Davao City as the Cacao capital. So,
Yeah.
di ba, mabuti na lang din yung makausap natin yung mga in charge or supposed to be the ones on top of this. Ano?
No, I was telling Secretary Dar and Yusek Lavinia to talk to them already kasi I was so surprised because the previous head of Philippine Cacao Industry Council is Mr. Walter Tur, and it's not against this except that there's new head from Cebu. So I was telling them to talk to her about this. Kasi in fairness naman to Davao, Cebu produces 1% of the cacao in the Philippines. Cebu 1%, Eastern Visayas 1%, Western Visayas 1%. So all in all, ang pinoproduce ng Visayas region is 3%. And ang Luzon is 8%. And the rest of Mindanao, 10% aside from Davao. So I thought that Davao has really done a good job on this. So parang, di ba, i-recognize natin. Ngayon, kung gumaling sila in the future, they will amend the law and make them the cacao capital of the Philippines. Bihira yung nakaka 80%.
All right. Your Honor, Mr. President, the sponsor, I am sure, has very good intentions, and the recognition is important not only to the committee but to the people of the region. You know? But it becomes a law, and it's not a resolution. It has already been declared by the DA. Now we make a law out of it. There is an unintended effect, and that will entail funding. That will allow funding, financial considerations. Yun ang mga nakikita ng iba doon. Kaya baka sila daw ay hindi sila magkaroon. Pagka yung mga maliliit na wala na silang pagkakataon na lumaki naman pagka hindi sila natulungan. So, yun lang naman ang isa sa mga punto na binabanggit natin. Alright?
There's a manifestation from the DA High Value Crop Budget, Cacao budget for 21. They will go to all over the country except Davao. For distribution of seedlings cacao, none will actually go to Davao. Davao is the source of quality cacao seedlings for distribution to other provinces.
Okay. Anyway, I have brought into the records, and I have informed the chairperson, your committee. I have informed the Senate of the complaints or the issues that were raised by the different sectors that I mentioned. Just perhaps a unsolicited advice, because I understand that the author of the measure, Senator De La Rosa, it's best also that you look into Article 6, Section 14 of the 1987 Constitution. With that, I thank you, Your Honor, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Senate President, for your concern, and we will ask the Department of Agriculture and the DA High Value Crop Program to go and talk to the Philippine Coconut Industry Council, so they will settle this matter. And I thought that I really made the committee report because of the bill that was passed in Congress that were sent to the Senate, and I thought that it will be a good gesture that if they pass a bill recognizing Davao, it will be just a good gesture that we pass a counterpart bill in the Senate. I have no personal concern on this, and I thought that giving recognition to a place that made very good is a good incentive for them to be better. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, there are still a couple of colleagues of ours who wish to interpolate. I believe Senator Kiko Pangilinan and Senator Pia Cayetano, but they requested for tomorrow. Is that correct? For Wednesday? So if it's okay, Mr. President, we suspend consideration of the measure till tomorrow afternoon.
Mr. President, just a quick manifestation.
Senator Pangilinan, before we act on the motion.
Yes, with the understanding that perhaps we could get the, if it's possible for us to get some of the communications of the PICAF so that we can go through it as well and make the necessary preparations for our interpellation tomorrow.
Yes, we will send you as soon as possible today.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, so I
All right,
move,
the
Mr.
motion
President.
is to suspend consideration. Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is suspended.
Mr. President, due to the importance of the measure and the need of our LGUs to discuss this and to pass this bill for our LGU vaccine procurement program, I move that we transfer from the calendar of ordinary business. Or rather, before we do that, I move, Mr. President, for the additional reference of business.
Secretary will proceed with the additional reference of business. Second additional reference of business.
Second additional reference of business, bill on first reading, Senate number 2056, an act authorizing the President of the Philippines to assume liabilities which may arise from the administration of approved vaccines, establishing a vaccine indemnification fund and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Soto III.
The Committee is on Health and Finance.
Committee report number 185, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Finance, Ways and Means, and Health and Demography on Senate number 2057 with Senators Marcos, Poe, Cayetano, Revilla Jr., Zubiri, Angara, Recto, and Go as authors thereof, entitled An Act Expediting the Procurement and Administration of Vaccines for the Protection Against the Coronavirus Disease 2019 COVID-19, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate numbers 1988, 1994, 1999, 2042, and 2046, taking into consideration PS Resolution numbers 615 and 617, sponsor Senator Angara.
The calendar for ordinary business. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with that, I move to transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special order Senate Bill number 2057 under Committee Report number 185. I so move.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Motion's approved.
I move to
So
consider
transfer.
Senate. Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we consider Senate Bill number 2057 under Committee Report number 185 and ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
Secretary will read the title of the measure. Senate Bill 2057.
Senate Bill number 2057, an act expediting the procurement and administration of vaccines for the protection against coronavirus disease 2019 COVID-19, providing funds therefore and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. President. may we recognize the sponsor of the measure, the distinguished gentleman from Aurora, Baler, no other than the chairman of the Committee on Finance, Senator Sonny Angara, Mr. President.
Senator Sani Angara is recognized.
Thank
To
you,
sponsor
Mr.
the
President.
measure.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Allow me to sponsor this measure, including the one filed by our distinguished Majority Leader. Mr. President, 2020 will be remembered as a year when the world was brought to its knees by the COVID-19 pandemic. But now that more and more countries are vaccinating their people, it is looking like 2021 will be remembered as the year when the pandemic began to end. According to data from Bloomberg, more than 172 million COVID-19 vaccine doses have been administered across 77 countries as of Valentine's Day this year. And with a vaccination rate of little more than 6.057 million doses per day on the average, Bloomberg estimates it would take roughly 5 years before herd immunity, where at least 75% of the world's population are covered with a 2-dose vaccine, is achieved. Realizing this goal entails surmounting the greatest logistical challenge humanity has faced. For sure, some countries will be able to vaccinate their people faster than the others. And those that are falling behind would be hard-pressed to do everything they can to set the policy framework and program to catch up and to hasten the process. Dito po nakatuon, Mr. President, ang panukalang batas na ating hinaharap sa plenaryo ngayong araw na tungkol sa pagtatag ng COVID-19 vaccination program. Ang pinakapakay ng panukalang ito, base sa Senate Bill 2042 na inihain ng ating magiting na Majority Floor Leader, Senator Mig Zubiri, at ang Committee on Health Chair, Senator Bongo, at iba pang mga kaakibat na panukala mula sa ating mga kasamahan, sila Senator Amy Marcos, Senator Grace Poe, Senator Pia Cayetano, Senator Bong Revilla, Senator Ralph Recto, ay pabilisin ang pagbili at siguraduhing maayos ang pag-administer ng bakuna laban sa COVID-19 para sa buong bansa. Upang mas maagang mawakasan natin ang pandemya dito sa Pilipinas at masimulan ang muling pagbangon ng ating ekonomiya. Our proposed COVID-19 Vaccination Program Act is filed as a consolidation of Senate Bill 1988 of Senator Marcos, Senate Bill 1994 of Senator Poe, Senate Bill 1999 of Senators Cayetano and Revilla, Senate Bill 2042 of Majority Leaders Zubiri and Revilla, and Senate Bill 2046 of this representation, and in consideration of Senate Resolution 615 and 617 of Senators Marcos and Recto. Our measure aims to expedite the procurement and administration of COVID-19 vaccines through the following. First, by authorizing the Department of Health, DOH, and the National Task Force Against COVID-19, or the NTF, to undertake negotiated procurement of COVID-19 vaccines and the ancillary supplies and services for their storage, transport, and distribution. This authorization shall also allow the DOH and the NTF to procure through supply agreements, advance market commitments, research investments, purchase orders, advance payments, or other schemes as may be determined by the NTF, who shall be the main instrumentality to negotiate terms and conditions with suppliers in a bid to ensure price uniformity and to prevent price competition between procuring entities. Second, Mr. President, by allowing local government units, or LGUs, namely provinces, cities, and municipalities, to purchase COVID-19 vaccines and ancillary supplies and services. LGUs may purchase vaccines only in cooperation with the DOH and the NTF, subject to the terms and conditions for distribution and prioritization set by the National Immunization Technical Advisory, or NITAG, NITAG, and through multi-party agreements, which include the DOH and the relevant suppliers or providers. LGUs will be allowed to make advance payments, but they can only purchase vaccines and supplies for up to 50% of their target population, following the proposal of Senator Kiko Pangilinan for this to be explicitly stated in this measure. This 50% cap, though, may be adjusted by the IATF depending on the supply of vaccines. As proposed by the Minority Floor Leader, Senator Frank Drilon, these LGUs must give due priority to frontline health workers senior citizens, and indigent persons. They will also be required to exercise utmost transparency and report any supply or purchase agreement into which they have entered. And as recommended by our friend, Senator Joel Villanueva, the LGUs will also have to submit a master list of the names and profiles of their constituents who are eligible to receive vaccines. While there is roughly 82.5 billion that has been appropriated in 2021 for our national immunization program against COVID-19, we are adding more to this fund by allowing LGUs to use whatever resources they have to purchase vaccines and related supplies. In fact, based on a survey and study conducted by the League of Provinces of the Philippines, 70 LGUs are prepared to spend a little more than 13 billion to purchase and administer vaccines. 4.392 billion from 32 provinces and 8.72 billion from 38 cities and municipalities. With our national revenues down, we will need as much cash as we can to procure and administer vaccines expeditiously, Mr. President. By allowing LGUs to take an active part in the procurement of vaccines, we also increase the volumes that we are purchasing, which in turn would allow the national government, particularly the office of our vaccine czar, Secretary Galvez, to negotiate for more affordable prices. Third, Mr. President, by allowing private entities to purchase vaccines subject to similar restrictions and conditions set for LGUs and only for the sole and exclusive use of these private entities. Fourth, Mr. President, following the measure filed by Senator Marcos and this representation, we are exempting from customs duties, value-added tax, excise tax, donors tax, and other fees and charges levied on the procured COVID-19 vaccines and the necessary supplies for their storage, transport, and distribution. This is to complement the exemptions provided in the Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises Act, or CREATE, which is awaiting the signature of the President. Through the aforementioned steps, we hope to break down some regulatory barriers. We hope to free up some resources and empower as many government instrumentalities as we can towards the fast procurement and expeditious rollout of COVID-19 vaccinations. But given that there are still a few critical things that we do not know about COVID-19 vaccines, our measure also includes some safeguards. For one, as recommended by Senators Cayetano and Go, our bill authorizes the Health Technology Assessment Council, or HTAC, to make recommendations to the DOH and PhilHealth about COVID-19 vaccines based on preliminary phase 3 clinical trials, but only when the relevant vaccine manufacturer has been issued an emergency use authorization, or EUA, by the Food and Drug Administration. Then, as recommended by Senator Nancy Binay, a special task group comprised of medical and vaccine experts will be established by the IATF for the sole purpose of conducting post-vaccination monitoring of patients. This is to ensure a quick response in case there are any who might experience serious adverse side effects after being vaccinated. Our measure also establishes a COVID-19 indemnity fund as proposed by the Department of Finance, which shall only be used to compensate any inoculated person who subsequently experiences SAEs or worse death. This fund will be worth 500 million pesos, and as suggested by our distinguished minority floor leader, it will be sourced from the contingent fund and shall be administered by PhilHealth. Many of our officials, including Vaccine Czar Secretary Galvez, have emphasized how the COVID-19 vaccines actually serve a dual purpose. The first is obvious, to inoculate our people from the virus. The second is more profound, Mr. President. It is to build back our people's confidence, to make them feel safe about moving around society again. It is to give them assurance that a return to normalcy is imminent and possible. This is why, following the measures filed by Senators Cayetano, Revilla, and Poe, our bill also creates a vaccination passport program. Here, the DOH will be mandated to issue to all Filipinos who have been inoculated so-called vaccination passports, which shall serve as a record of all the COVID-19 vaccinations they have received. In compliance with our data privacy laws, these passports will contain only the relevant information, basic personal information, the manufacturer of the vaccine used, the date of the inoculation, among others. These passports are intended to be digital. Hence, the Department of Information and Communications Technology, or DICT, will be mandated to develop the needed digital systems and applications. But given that there remains a digital divide in the country, these passports will also be available as printed documents. These passports will serve as documentary proof that a person has completed a full round of COVID-19 vaccinations, which could then allow them to go abroad wherever they are permitted, to engage in non-essential domestic travel, to grant them quick passage through local checkpoints, and access to business establishments. Mr. President, we as a people have lost so much because of the pandemic, in terms of jobs, opportunities, and human life. However, we believe that with this measure, we have not lost out on the belief that there will be an end to this ordeal. The development of COVID-19 vaccines in such a short amount of time is in itself a huge scientific achievement. But that alone will not end this pandemic. That alone will not bring things back to normal. To achieve that, we will need nothing less than the whole nation acting together. All sectors of society, all levels of government, all our policies, all our regulations, all our systems need to be aligned and sync. Every part will need to act harmoniously. In the end, we won't just be injecting vaccines, we'll be injecting hope, which is perhaps the single most important ingredient in our recovery as a nation. With the help of our co-authors, Senators Marcos, Poe, Cayetano, Revilla, Recto, and Goin, of course, our majority leader, and all other senators who've contributed their inputs, we have endeavored to craft a piece of legislation that will hopefully achieve exactly that. For the sake of national recovery and for the hopes and aspirations of all our countrymen, we request the August Chamber to act swiftly on this proposal. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Senator Ralph Recto, before their co-sponsor.
Yeah, thank you very much. Also to be listed to co-sponsor the measure, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr.
All
President.
right, after the majority
you.
leader. The majority leader, Senator Subiri, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, under the list, it will be Senator Recto. We have also, I believe, Senator Joel Villanueva. Senator Bongo would also like to co-sponsor. So if I may, Mr. President, to co-sponsor the measure, just a short speech. Mr. President, as the entire country awaits the arrival of the first batch of COVID-19 vaccines, I stand here to co-sponsor our new Senate Bill number 2057, under Committee Report number 185, expediting the procurement and administration of vaccines for the protection against COVID-19 by exempting local government units from compliance with the procurement requirements under Republic Act 9184 or the Government Procurement Reform Act and other provisions of laws. First of all, I would like to thank my dear colleagues, starting with our Senate President Tito Soto, who really saw the importance of this measure, our chairperson and sponsor, Senator Sonny Angara, for hearing this right away, and of course, those who attended the hearing, most especially our distinguished Minority Floor Leader, Senator Franklin Drilon, as well as our other authors, namely Senator Marcos, Senator Recto, Senator Bongo, Senator Cayetano, Senator Revilla, and our hardworking seatmates, Senator Poe, Senator Villanueva, and Senator Nancy Binay, as well as Senator Risa Ontiveros for their active participation during the hearings and added inputs to make this bill even better. We all know that we are in a race against the clock. We need mass inoculation and herd immunity as soon as possible, Mr. President, so we can defeat this virus, safeguard the health of our people, and finally work towards economic recovery from this pandemic. As such, our LGUs have been eagerly requesting this bill to help them procure the vaccines for their constituents as quickly and as painlessly as possible. About 70 LGUs are already in negotiations with vaccine suppliers through the tripartite mechanism, and they will, of course, need to give an advance deposit to these vaccine manufacturers to secure their vaccines. Otherwise, Mr. President, they may lose the allocation. They are also requesting that they be exempted from the procurement requirement of purchasing only the lowest bid. Mahirap po ito sa COVID-19 vaccine, Mr. President, dahil supply-driven po ito. Hindi naman po palaging available agad ang lowest price. Again, this is an urgent need, and we cannot afford to wait for a resupply of the cheapest vaccine when people are still dying from this virus every single day. This bill, Mr. President, will also exempt LGUs from Section 338 of the Local Government Code and Section 88 of the Government Auditing Code, which prohibits advance payments. We will allow LGUs to be able to make advance payments or deposits under this bill, or down payment rather, for the duration of the state of national calamity or the pandemic. This is important so that our LGUs can close or finalize the supply agreements through the tripartite mechanism and secure their allocation of vaccines so we can speed up the rollout of the national vaccination program. Ngayon sa mga natatakot po na baka hindi pantay-pantay ang kakayanan ng ating mga LGU na bumili ng vaccine or baka magkaroon ng sariling priority list at inoculation program para sa ating mga LGU, huwag po kayong mag-alala. Dahil lock-in pa rin po ang ating mga LGU sa tripartite facilitated agreements by the national government. Mr. President, susunod pa rin po ang LGU sa national guidelines on the COVID-19 prioritization framework and the criteria drafted by the National Immunization Technical Advisory Group, which was adopted by the IATF, especially on the prioritization of frontline workers in health facilities, senior citizens aged 60 years old and above, and indigent persons. So, should not be the rich versus the poor or the power versus the powerless scenario. It should never be that way, Mr. President. Ang mabibili pong vaccines ng mga LGU under this bill ay for augmentation lamang sa supply ng national government at iyon pong mga LGU na walang pambili ng vaccines ay sasaluhin po ng ating national government. Kung tutusin nga po, Mr. President, lalaki pa ang pondo ng national government para pambili ng bakuna sa mga lower income areas. Kasi iyon pong dapat nakalaan sa national budget for higher income areas will now be able to redirect some of that money to rural areas for low income LGUs. Vaccination has to be a national effort, Mr. President. We all understand that. But in an archipelagic country, LGUs are naturally going to play a big part in that national effort. This bill will empower our LGUs to help the national government vaccinate as many people as possible, as soon as possible. To me, Mr. President, this is the true spirit of bayanihan. This is bayanihan at work. With that, Mr. President, I am urging our colleagues to join us in seeing the urgent passage of this measure. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President. And next in line to give his sponsorship speech is our distinguished Senate President Pro Tem, Senator Ralph Recto, Mr. President.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, my dear colleagues, if the virus is mutating, so must our rules in containing it. If it is spawning variants, the same must happen to our ways of defeating it. The bureaucracy must always be faster than the virus, and nowhere is the speed more needed than in buying the one thing that could end it: vaccines. Sadly, Mr. President, we seem to be at the tail end of the vaccine race, overtaken by countries with fewer resources, when we, with more resources and more cases, should be getting more. They're getting 4 million doses of AstraZeneca in Timbuktu, in Mali in April. And I am not joking, Mr. President, as it is in the news. We can only watch in envy as planes unload vaccines from Myanmar to Harare. This prompted the joke that government should have conducted contract signing simulation before it held vaccine delivery drills. Mr. President, we need all hands on deck, and the local governments are hopping on board. They want to search their own using money that is theirs. This unburdens the national government in two fronts. It will have to order fewer vaccines and it will spend less money. But while local governments are allowed, it is not a license for them to go on an unbridled vaccine shopping spree. There is no waiver on FDA approvals. Government clearances remain. The multi-party agreement stands. Delivery will follow IATF protocol. Vaccine equitability will be honored. It simply means that what they will do will remain in the ambit of the national vaccination plan. They will not be freelancing. What they want is to stop freeloading on a national government under pressure to deliver as many vaccines to as many people as fast as possible. Many local governments have, in fact, out-hustled the national government when it comes to securing vaccines in a world where such is scarce. How they do it, I don't know, Mr. President. But if this template yielded positive results, then instead of emasculating it, we should in fact be encouraging it. It doesn't matter whether the cat is black or white, as long as it catches the mice. So let us allow more cats out of the bag. Mr. President, the all-of-nation approach against COVID rejects the monopoly of ideas or of work. Certainly, it should not centralize as well under one national authority, the monopoly of buying vaccines. More so if it had been sputtering on the job. We should stop further punishing a people running out of jobs, food, and hope with the shortcomings and bungling of those who are supposed to alleviate their pain and not aggravate it. This bill is a booster shot to the government's vaccine plan. And let me know that it goes several steps further, Mr. President. It exempts vaccines from taxes, for why should government profit from universal misery? The same exemption extends to the private sector, who should not be taxed for doing their patriotic duty. Procurement rules will likewise be relaxed in a manner that will shorten the process without leaving the government shortchanged. When your neighbor's house is on fire, you don't hold a public bidding for the supply of water. As an author of a proposed Senate Resolution 617, which seeks the very same ends that this bill authorizes, I join Senator Miggs, our majority leader, and Senator Sonny in sponsoring this measure. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next
Yes.
in line to sponsor is our distinguished colleague from Bulacan, Senator Joel Villanueva, after which will be Senator Bongo, Christopher Bongo, and then Senator Grace Poe.
All right,
President,
Senator
that's
Joel Villanueva, gentleman from Bulacan, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, distinguished Majority Floor Leader. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. At first, let me just put on record my sincerest thanks and gratitude and congratulations to the leadership of the Senate headed by our Senate President, Senator Tito Soto, our SP Pro Temp, Senator Ralph Recto, our Majority Leader, Senator Mig Subiri, our Minority Leader, Senator Frank Drilon, the Chair of the Committee on Finance, Senator Sani Angara, and our dear colleagues in the Senate for coming up with this very important piece of legislation. In many emergency situations and calamities in the past, our local government units were always first on the scene. They are the first responders, whether in benign or life-threatening situations. Lagi pong una ang pagsaklolo ng mga LGUs. Bagyo man ito, baha, lindol, putok ng bulkan, natumbang poste ng kuryente, aksidente sa kalsada, walang makakauna sa mga lokal na pamahalaan. I have personally witnessed in my home province in Bulacan, particularly in my hometown, Bukawi, especially during the time of my late sister Mayor Joni, how our local chief executives can make decisions at lightning speed and how they can think of solutions to problems that have resisted traditional approaches. Our LGUs and the private sector saved us many times over in the past. Shouldn't we trust them now, Mr. President? Mr. President, we fully support this measure that will allow LGUs and private entities to purchase vaccines in cooperation with the DOH and the National Task Force against COVID-19. But we are fully aware that not all LGUs or private companies have the resources or capability to procure the vaccines and that there can be an equity issue along the way. While it is true that richer LGUs with the capacity to pay, like Metro Manila cities, could be the first to purchase vaccines, we should also remember that Metro Manila is a pandemic hotspot that accounts for about half of our country's total COVID-19 cases. Kahit na LGU-funded o private entity-funded pa ang pagbili ng bakuna, kailangan pa rin naman pong sumunod sa mga panuntunan, lalo na po kung sino ang mga dapat unahing bigyan ng bakuna. Prioridad pa rin ang mga vulnerable o disadvantaged tulad ng ating mga healthcare workers, senior citizens, indigents, at mga essential workers. Wala naman pong dapat ipag-alala ang ating mga kababayan kung wala pong kakayahan ang kanilang LGU dahil sigurado naman po na bibili pa rin ng bakuna ang national government natin. Mr. President, as we speak right now, more than 176 million shots have been administered over 78 countries. The latest rate was estimated at 5.99 million doses a day. But unfortunately, not a single dose has reached our shores, Mr. President. So let us pass this measure so that once the vaccines are here, they can easily reach the arms of every Filipino adult who wanted one. Maraming salamat po and may God bless us all. all. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Christopher Bongo is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is my honor to co-sponsor the COVID-19 vaccination program bill to expedite the procurement of COVID-19 vaccines. As a author of this measure and chair of the Committee on Health and Demography, I commend our Majority Leader, Senator Mig Subiri, the principal author of Senate Bill 2042, for pushing for this timely measure, and of course Senator Sani Angara for coming up with the committee report with the help of our colleagues. As discussed by Senator Galvez during the committee hearing and during the meeting with the President yesterday, this bill is urgently needed, particularly to allow our local government units to procure vaccines and make advance payments up to 50% in order to increase our national volume, and to include an indemnification fund that is being requested by vaccine manufacturers to cover the adverse effects of the vaccines, if any. Malaki po ang pasasalamat ko sa ating mga LGU sa kanilang inisyatibo sa pag-secure ng vaccines para sa kanilang constituents. The national government must work hand in hand with our LGUs because despite the national government's own tireless efforts, we cannot do this alone. We need to be unified. We need to be united amid these challenges. In the spirit of bayanihan, some LGUs have entered into tripartite agreements with the national government and vaccine manufacturers and have allotted funds to help ensure the immediate and efficient rollout of the COVID-19 vaccination program. Malaking tulong po ito. Sa kabila nito, marami pa tayong mga oportunidad upang magtulungan. Additionally, the vaccine indemnification fund is intended to be earmarked exclusively to compensate and indemnify identified vaccine recipients who sustain injury in connection with the use of the vaccines and where the adverse effects may be attributed to the vaccination. According to Secretary Galvez, all vaccine manufacturers require indemnify and liability frameworks, which include setting up an indemnification fund backed by legislation to safeguard them from possible liabilities. Medyo nagmamadali na po ang ating National Task Force ukol dito. They have informed the National Task Force against COVID-19 that without legislation covering indemnification, they may not be able to supply the vaccine. Kaya suportado ko po ang panukala na ito para mas maging handa tayo sa kung meron mang hindi kanais-nais na epekto sa tao ang paggamit ng COVID-19. Importante na maisabatas ito dahil malaking parte ito ng ating national COVID-19 vaccine roadmap at kailangan ito upang tuloy-tuloy na ang pag-roll out ng mga bakuna sa ating bansa. I also want to emphasize and commend the inclusion of a provision in the committee report that will waive the requirement of phase 4 trials for COVID-19 medication and vaccine stipulated in the Universal Healthcare Law to expedite the procurement of COVID-19 vaccine. The provision under Bayanihan 2 is due to expire next month, which is why this provision is needed to cover the ongoing procurement of vaccines. The Health Technology Assessment Council will now have the authority to make recommendations to the DOH and the PhilHealth on COVID-19 vaccines based on preliminary data from phase 3 clinical trials and World Health Organization recommendation. I just want to underscore that to ensure safety, there must be an emergency use authorization from the Food and Drug Administration. Mr. President, napakahalaga ng bakuna para sa ating recovery. Ito po talaga ang ating pag-asa. Ito po ang ating susi para unti-unti na po tayong makabalik sa ating normal na pamumuhay. According to the National Economic and Development Authority or NEDA, reverting to enhanced community quarantine could cost NCR and nearby regions some 2.1 billion pesos in income a day. Meanwhile, every day of general community quarantine costs these regions around 700 million pesos in income. Malaki na po ang epekto ng COVID-19 sa ating ekonomiya. Marami na po ang nawala ng trabaho at nadadagdagan po ang mga nagugutom nating mga kababayan. Nakikiusap po ako kay Secretary Galvez na bukod po sa frontliners ay unahin rin po talaga yung mga mahihirap nating mga kababayan na wala pong access sa vaccine. Hindi po alam kung saan kukunin yung vaccine. Hindi rin po nila alam ano po ang itsura ng vaccine. Makipag-coordinate po tayo sa mga LGUs na walang pondo po ng pambili ng bakuna. Kasi marami pa pong LGUs na wala talaga silang sariling pambili po ng bakuna. Ipagpatuloy rin po natin dapat ang close coordination sa mga LGUs at maging sa pribadong sektor. Ito po ay bahagi ng ating whole of nation approach upang tuluyan na nating malampasan ang pandemyang ito. Paparating na po ang mga bakuna, kaya doble po ang efforts natin para ipaintindi sa ating mga kababayan kung ano po ang mga bakunang darating, ano ang plano ng gobyerno ukol dito, at ano ang ginagawa nating hakbang para masigurado natin na magkaroon tayo ng ligtas at epektibong bakuna. Sa kakaikot ko po, maraming gustong magpabakuna, pero nagtuturuan po sila kung sinong unang magpabakuna. Kailangan po, tayo, hindi naman ibig sabihin na tayo po ang prioridad, pero tayo pong mauna para ipakita at kunin po natin ang kumpiyansa ng ating mga kababayan. Mr. President, importanteng makuha yung kumpiyansa ng mga kababayan natin, confidence ng mga kababayan natin. Dahil kung makakabili nga tayo ng bakuna pero wala namang magpapaturok, hindi pa rin po tayo makaka-recover sa pandemyang ito. I now call on our fellow Filipinos to trust the government and trust our medical experts. Importante po sa ating lahat ang safety at efficacy ng vaccine na bibilhin. Hindi po papayag ang mga medical experts natin na hindi safe at effective ang bakuna na ituturok sa atin. Magtiwala po tayo sa ginagawa ng ating gobyerno para mabigyan tayo ng sufficient, safe at effective vaccines. Magtiwala po tayo, bayanihan po tayo, magkaisa po tayo para po sa kapakanan ng bawat Pilipino. Thank you, Mr. President.
Right, Senator Grace Poe is recognized.
Senator Grace Poe, Mr. President, she mentioned she wanted to give a co-sponsorship speech.
Mr. President, in the meantime, can we ask the majority leader to represent the Senate as the first recipient of the vaccine? Mr. President. And I think he prefers the posterior injection, Mr. President.
Mr. President, you know the sponsor, Senator Angara, has always gave me priority in only statements. Statements that make no basis. Mr. President, I may not be able to be the first because I'm neither under the priority list of government I'm neither a frontline health worker or am I a senior citizen. I believe the best person to take the job would be our two youngest members of the Senate. That would be our Senate President as well as our Minority Floor Leader, so we can show bipartisan support for the vaccine. I think that would be the best.
Don't forget Senator Lacson and Gordon.
Oh, yes, of course, Senator Lacson and Gordon. That way we can bring the left and the right together as one in this chamber, and we can
Mr.
show them that
President.
we are united with this vaccine program.
Mr. President, just a
Yes,
very short
Dr. Villanueva.
manifestation. I joined Senator Angara in nominating our majority floor leader because he is the most essential worker, Mr. President. Imagine there are two agenda that is not part of today's agenda that we are tackling today. Thanks to our majority floor leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Due to the emergency nature of the measure, we really need to tackle this right away. While we're waiting, Senator Grace Poe, I believe she's having technical difficulties. May we recognize Senator Francis Tolentino as well as our minority floor leader afterwards, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr.
Senator
President.
Francis Tolentino is recognized.
With the permission of our sponsors and authors, may I be allowed to be a co-author likewise, Mr. President? The
Yes, it
permission.
would be an honor, Mr. President. It would be an honor.
Thank you, Mr. President. That permission would allow me to rejoin the ranks temporarily of our the ranks of our LGs, Mr. President. Last night, Mr. President, just a brief manifestation. I was reading this small, short article coming from the Journal of Public History, Volume 20, 2008, and the title is "The Least Vaccinated of Any Civilized Country" by Michael Wildrich. Nakakatakot po, Mr. President, but to share just two takeaways, Mr. President, as part of my permitted co-authorship. One, vaccination is a badge of citizenship. Vaccination is a badge of citizenship. Two, Mr. President, and this refers to the smallpox epidemic before, let me share one takeaway, Mr. President, and I quote, "The amount of mortality in a country by smallpox seems to bear a fixed relation to the extent to which vaccination is carried out." Having said that, I thank the author sponsors for allowing me to be a co-author likewise. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. If
May we
Senator Grace
recognize
Poe
our
is not,
minority floor leader, Mr. President?
the minority leader, Senator Drillo is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I was actually raising my hand to manifest my support for this bill, to show that there is bipartisan support for this measure. However, in the period of interpretation, I would like to ask a few questions and put on the record certain issues for the guidance of the implementers of this law. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Finally, Mr. President, we have a few members who wish to be co-sponsor, co-author of this measure with the permission of our sponsors and authors. We'd like to put on record Senator Joel Villanueva, Senator Nancy Binay, and Senator Wing Gatchalian would like to be made co-authors of the measure, as well as Senator Richard Gordon, and as mentioned earlier, Senator Francis Tolentino to be made authors of this measure, co-authors. And we'd like to so move, Mr. President, to put it placed on record.
All right. I take note of the manifestation.
And we'd like to recognize Senator Gordon, Mr. President, who would like to be recognized.
Senator
Just a
Richard Gordon is
manifestation.
recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a manifestation. I'm in full support of the principle that the bill espouses, Mr. President. But I just would like to reserve my right to make some questions for improving, if that's possible. That's ambitious on my part. The bill, if we have to. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, perhaps, yeah, Senator Poe is not online, so
Yes, Mr. President, she asked me to just place on record that her sponsorship speech will be inserted to the records and given to
All
the
right.
Secretariat. Thank you.
well, it's all placed on record.
Thank you. With that, Mr. President, to allow our colleagues to study the measure further, we just like to make an announcement that we will put this in the agenda first hour tomorrow. Discuss this and debate upon it already due to the importance and the need that it's time bound, Mr. President. With that, we move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2057, Mr. President.
All right. Hearing no objection, consideration of 2057 is hereby suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. A dear colleague of ours would like to avail of the privilege hour. May we recognize our distinguished colleague from Zambales, Senator Richard Dick Gordon, to give a privileged speech, Mr. President.
Senator Richard Gordon is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and Majority Floor Leader. My dear colleagues, I rise on a question of collective privilege this afternoon, rather hesitantly, Mr. President, because of what I read in the newspapers, and I was asked this morning what I thought about the President saying na hindi dapat makialam ang ilang mga senador dito sa sinasabi niya sa VFA. I think the President has his own strategies on the matter of VFA, of dealing with the Americans and dealing with the Chinese. Hindi po ako nakikialam doon. Pero on the same breath, the President must realize, as I'm sure he does, but sometimes he may be prone to creating, having a reaction when something disagreeable is presented to him by his colleagues or his advisors. Mr. President, the Senate is a co-equal branch, and we all know that. And as you know, every time the Senate is sullied by people who do not seem to respect it, do not appear in our committees, or do not refuse to who refuse to answer questions, I will be the first ones to rise and say, you cannot muzzle the Senate. The government is composed of three branches, Mr. President, all of whom act on the matter, among others, of foreign policy. In the matter of foreign policy and national security, the Senate can react. After all, we ratified two treaties, the Mutual Defense Pact of 1951 and the VFA, Mr. President, which we also ratified. The jury is still out on the issue of whether we need Senate ratification or adherence if we are going to withdraw from a treaty. But then, Mr. President, I don't think the intention right now is to withdraw, but to really negotiate on the matter of price. While I do not share the President's propensity to make statements aloud or in the public, because I believe diplomacy should be undertaken quietly, Mr. President, then I think quiet diplomacy is far more effective than public posturing. I would not want, again, the Americans during the basis talks in 1991, 1990, to say that we do not negotiate with countries that have a cash register beside it, Mr. President. I think that demeans the nation, and without accusing the President of that, I just say, tarry a little, because we should really be able to rise and to a level of statesmanship that will allow other countries to respect us. Well, of course, President Duterte is a class unto himself, and he says what sometimes is on his mind, and sometimes his statements are kind of rash and to a certain extent out of whack, Mr. President, if I may say that. I'm trying to be polite because it's not my intention to criticize the President here. But what I do find really unacceptable is that the Senate must keep its mouth shut. For example, and on the matter, because we, as I said, ratify treaties, and at the same time, foreign agreements and international agreements under the Constitution require a 2/3 vote from the Senate. And I remind everybody, and I know you all do, don't have to do that, the Senate is a forum of the people. We are allowed our opinion, just as President Duterte is allowed his opinion. And that's what makes living in a democracy very beautiful. The President can say something, and we can disagree. And we don't have to go to war with each other to disagree. I think the dialogue enriches the positions of our country if we're all able to listen to each other instead of shouting at one another. And so this forum of the people that represents 110 million Filipinos must speak on matters of national security. We certainly have the right to speak and talk about it. And I thank Senator Tolentino because 3 weeks ago he stood up, and I was completely unaware that China had come out with a law involving their Coast Guard, allowing them to fire away at any vessel that will operate that would not follow their bidding. I even said that what are China's intentions? Are they a friend? I know that the Filipino people are friends with the Chinese people. I'm afraid I cannot say as much the way the Chinese government is acting. I cannot say with certainty that the Chinese government is friendly to us, Mr. President. why are we being treated this way by China? It might be because they see that the president is favoring them. Perhaps this is, again, what you might call a strategy on the part of the president. Or maybe it's because we're identified with the United States. When I say it's part of the strategy of the president, I'm reminded, Mr. President, that in World War II, when France was taken over by Germany and the rest of Europe was already under the heel of Germany, with the exception of the Soviet Union, England was begging for help, practically begging, and I mean that, to get help from the United States, which was at that time adopting a very isolationist policy. They didn't want to go to war in Europe. They didn't want to intervene in Europe. But Roosevelt knew that once France had been taken, he knew that the Atlantic Ocean had suddenly shrunk. With the U.S., with the mighty British fleet now susceptible to being attacked by German bombers or by German warships, and the taking of France must necessitate also the destruction of the French Navy in Algeria, if I'm not mistaken, and which the British did ultimately. But upon the other hand, the thrust of the strategy of Roosevelt in order to get the American people, who was totally isolationist at that time, was to say to Winston Churchill that I can give you 50 old destroyers and other equipment because I can tell the American people that the war has gotten nearer to our shores. But at the same time, I must also tell them that you would have to contribute bases in exchange for land lease. Not only bases, but secrets of the United Kingdom at that time. And Mr. President, they did. In British territories, they gave 99-year leases. For example, in Diego Garcia, in the Indian Ocean, in Egmont Islands, Ile Anglais, Danger Island, Eagle Islands, Nelson's Island, Great Chagos Island, Three Brothers Island, Ile Diable, Ile du Sel, Ile Mapu, Ile Jacobin, Ile Sepulture, Le Car Pate, Blenheim Reef, the Bodam, Cacao land. Mr. President, all this were turned over, and Winston Churchill, and I quote, in exchange for the overage destroyers, in exchange, and giving the American bases the right to these British possessions, Winston Churchill later called it a decidedly unneutral act, because at that time, America had 4 laws on neutrality. A decidedly unneutral act, for the destroyers were far more important to Great Britain. It was in peril already of a German invasion. And in his view, Winston Churchill felt that they were far more important to Great Britain than the bases were to America. Well, in truth, in retrospect, I don't know. The only base that they occupy right now, as far as I know, that is important is Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, only because it is near the Middle East. And Mr. President, these bases were quite remote from any conceivable theater of operations, and some even duplicated existing American bases. Meaning to say, and I quote that from Henry Kissinger's book, Diplomacy, meaning to say now, it's a face-saving gesture and a way out for President Roosevelt to convince his fellow Americans to allow him to intervene, or the United States to intervene, in the coming war against Germany. Perhaps this is the strategy of Mr. Duterte. Perhaps he's saying, as if to say to the Filipino people, well, they should pay. But I think he should say that silently, and he should allow his able ministers, particularly the Secretary of National Defense, whom I admire deeply, as well as Secretary Lorenzana, as well as Secretary Terry Boy Locsin, again, somebody that I admire, to do the negotiations for him rather than making the statements. That's why I don't charge the president with a knee-jerk reaction, because probably he was miffed by a statement made by some of our colleagues or some other people I don't even know that they're trying to intervene and think better than they are. We really have to step back a little bit and allow presidents to have their strategies. But in the ultimate objective, Your Honor, the Senate must have its say to ratify or to disagree. And that is guaranteed under the Constitution. And that is why also the people have the right to have their say. Because I question China's intentions because they're so near us. And, their submarines go past us and planes probably go past us. They have been teasing Taiwan, with their planes flying over them. They have their aircraft carriers pass over the Taiwan Straits. And Mr. President, I don't think that we should take that with a grain of salt. I think, as you have heard me so many times, for those of you who have been with me in the earlier Senate, I've always said from the very beginning that we must, if we want peace, we must prepare for war. Meaning to say that we have to put on money upon our military for the patrol of our external oceans, the protection of our the seas around us, as well as to make sure that our countrymen are safe, our fishermen are safe. That's why I keep asking China, ano bang threat sa inyo nung mangingisda? Na nung araw ay magkakasama tayong lahat. Kaya sabi ko, kaibigan natin ang mga Chinese people, nagpapalitan kayo ng ulam doon sa Scarborough Shoals, nagpapalitan kayo ng alak, nagpapalitan kayo ng sigarilyo, na hindi kayo nagbabakbakan. Pero mukhang ang inyong gobyerno, ngayon ang siyang may intentions. I was asked once whether China had hegemonic intentions. I said to the chairman of the board of FedEx that time who asked me that question, as you know, China is the Middle Kingdom. That's how they think of themselves. And people, there was some sort of a suzerainty. They thought that everybody should kowtow to them. A friend of mine was telling me that even the Sultan of Sulu went there to pay his respects to China. But I'm not so sure about that. But then things change. We are now all independent countries. China is no longer under the heel of the colonial past, where they had a statement before on the subdividing China into cantons. The Japanese having a canton, Americans having a canton, and if you remember the movie, The 55 Days of Peking, they were surrounded, and the Boxer Rebellion was then in progress, and there was a big fight that led to the unseating of the Manchu dynasty. Having said that, Mr. President, I only get up here today to let everybody know that we must not take this seriously, as lightly. We must take this with all seriousness because that was the way Germany got away with it. I'm talking about Hitler's Germany, not present Germany. Hitler's Germany got away with it because he said, oh no, we will just take free the Rhineland as part of our territory. You don't need French troops there anymore. And then later on they said, I need to get the Sudeten land because the Germans are being citizens there. German-speaking Sudeten land in Czechoslovakia are being abused. Or for that matter, Danzig, Poland, they're being abused. So if that is the case, Mr. President, it could very well be said, and I hope they won't, that you have a Chinese population here who have been totally assimilated. They are mayors, they're governors, they're here, but they might concoct an idea that the Chinese people are being abused here. And they might provoke something. For that matter, that happened already in Indonesia. And in Indonesia, during the time of Sukarno, the Kami, the Indonesian youth had their first quarter storm version, and they really went wild and attacked all the Chinese there. And even Nasution, General Nasution at that time, was attacked, but he was saved by the pro-Indonesian forces, and they dumped many of their Chinese compatriots in a place called Sapang Buaya, literally being eaten by the buayas in Indonesia. So, if we must have the peace, Mr. President, and I hate to say this because I'm not saying that there's going to be war, if we are to have peace, we have ASEAN. Anong ginagawa ng ASEAN? Baka siguro panahon na para pag-aralan na yan nangyayari ba sa Myanmar, hindi tayo makakibo. Ako, kung may bupo dyan, na dapat non-interference, siguro dapat hindi non-interference but constant dialogue on matters that affect each other's countries. Or for that matter, what would be our attitude in case China runs rampant in the West Philippine Sea? I'm not sure whether ASEAN will remain steadfast in its unity. Certainly, and I'm taking a risk of being criticized by my friends in Cambodia or in Laos, they're closer to China. They may not have that kind of independence of heart to be able to say no to China, which is extremely very, very strong. Now, Mr. President, don't get me wrong. I'm a dear friend of China, and I have a lot of friends there. I was there with Ferdinand Marcos Jr. as head of the young delegation of young people not too long ago on the occasion of the 10th anniversary of the Chinese-Philippine relationship. We were received very, very well. Chinese people are very smart people. They are a 5,000-year-old civilization that has invented medicine. In fact, one of the things I'd like to do, and I'm studying right now, is see whether we can allow the practice of traditional Chinese medicine in our country. My children went to Xavier School and they speak fluent Chinese. They even go to China to study on the ground and learn from each other. And that to me is the best way to constantly interact with each other and not to be expansionist, not to be overly aggressive, not to be over-claiming. This 9-dash line has already been disproved by Geneva, Mr. President. And I think we should stick to that. And Mr. President, if we continue to show, maybe the President is not showing weakness, maybe as I said, it's a strategy. Weakness can only invite more aggression, Mr. President. And that is why, how dare them say that they're allowing their Coast Guard to attack any ship, any bankable, or any place, an island. We have an island there, I think part of the province of Palawan, called Pagasa. How dare them say they will blow him out of the water? How dare them say that they will invade them and remove them? Mr. President, they tried to do that in Vietnam and they each got a bloody nose. The Vietnamese fought back. I admire the Vietnamese people for doing that. They did that with the Indians in the 50s. And the Indians fought back. And they had to step back. Even with the Russians on the Ozero River. And again, there was the clashes and a few deaths, and then they had to go back. But we are a people that will stand up. And that's why I just filed that bill on Lapu-Lapu, making him the sentinel of freedom of Asia to show na Lapu-Lapu was really a peaceful man. But when somebody threats on him, he will fight back because he's not just a Bisaya, he's not a Sugbu, he is in his heart, he has in his blood the blood of freedom, which we must go back and claim for our children and for our posterity. And so, Mr. President, today, I am filled with, resentment at this time for what my friends in China, our friends in China are doing. Let them prove their intentions. Unfortunately, intentions are not good enough. We can see their capacity. We can see their carriers. We can see their jet planes. We can see their bombers. Kung kailan sila lumaki, ngayon gusto nila, they want to be in competition with America. Yung competition na yan, yabang lang yan. The salvation of the world is in peaceful coexistence, good trading, and certainly lots and lots of doses of compassion for each other, Mr. President. And so today, I would like to thank my colleagues for allowing me to just say a few words about what's happened yesterday because I was shocked. I don't think that the president should say that wala kayong pakialam or wala tayong pakialam. Even kung kahit na naanghangan siya doon sa sinabi sa kanya. The president, I still look up to as a statesman. To some people, that's passé. But I respect the title, Mr. President. I respect the title of the presidency. It must mean something to every Filipino. And that's why the president must answer to that definition of statesmanship in the presidency. And that he must act like the president of all the people of this country and represent as well throughout the so loved, but I'm sure by a lot of our countrymen, a lot of people disagree with him, but under a democracy, he is the president. He deserves the advice, the respect, but at the same time, he must also give the respect to our countrymen. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mabuhay po ang ating bansa. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Senator Gordon. Majority Leader, I'm the only one here.
My apologies, I had to run to the restroom for a
I
restroom break.
think Senator Francis Tolentino
Recognize
is,
Senator Francis Tolentino, yes.
yes, we recognize Senator Francis Tolentino.
Yes, Mr. President, just two questions if the gentleman from Zambales would allow, Mr. President.
He may do so if he so desires.
Of course, Mr. President, I'm always accepting questions from our dear colleagues.
Yes,
Okay,
Mr.
please
President, I'd like to congratulate the good gentleman for insisting the institution of the Senate that should not be diminished in its role in society. I totally agree with that. When one good thing, Mr. President, when you're working from home, Mr. President, is you have a lot of materials and data readily available rather than when you're on the plenary, Mr. President. So I have some data here with me that would serve as the foundation of my questions. Just two questions, Mr. President. When the good gentleman was serving as the youngest member of the Constitutional Convention, I think that was 1971, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. President.
Your memory is quite good. You have not been attacked by Asog, Anosog no siya yet.
Yes, Mr. President. During that period, Mr. President, that was 1971. The Supreme Court of the United States came out with a very, very trailblazing announcement case. This is Cohen versus California. I have it with me. This was written by Justice Harlan. And one of the takeaways, Mr. President, is this, and I quote, "One man's vulgarity is another man's lyric." And I repeat, one man's vulgarity is another man's lyric. Perhaps to the listener or the listeners, I was not able to hear the comments of the President yesterday or the other day, it would appear that it would be vulgar. But for him, probably it would be lyrics. And probably it would be based on his own sentiments and reason on how to proceed with public administration. Is that a correct assumption, Mr. President?
I think I was very clear in my speech, Mr. President. I did not attack the president for his vulgarity. I said that that time and moment, that was what I was trying to say, that he was probably been, annoyed. And sometimes when one is annoyed, we're all human, we're prone to say certain things. But I have never, as I said in the latter part of my speech, and I gave extemporaneous remarks, I said that I respect the position of the president, and I expect, but also the president must respect the Filipino people. I don't think I never arrogated any vulgarity in the statement. I just said that I want to protect the Senate's just because in case other people might mistake it to mean that we are being muzzled in the Senate, Mr. President.
No, Mr. President, I stand corrected. I was not able to listen to the speech of the good gentleman, but I was referring to the previous speech of the president, and probably to tie it up with his speech a while ago, this must have relation to the speech delivered during the Clark Field ceremonies wherein a turnover ceremonies of newly acquired planes and air assets were turned over to the Philippine Air Force. And that's when the notion of payment cropped up. And that was one of the items I culled from the speech of the good gentleman. Am I correct in that assumption? You saw a while ago the statement as regards to the VFA.
Again, I did not see, Mr. President, that remark, that turnover. You know, we've been grieving with for my brother, and we've had very little sleep, but no time for television practically. But I was asked this morning, and that's how I came to know about the statement made by the president. And when I asked my staff this morning, they said there were remarks made by some of our colleagues here, and I don't even want to mention them, that says that we're not for sale. We're not that. Even the vice president made a remark that it was extortion. I think we should tone down the noise in this country and try to find out whether we can dialogue. And I didn't want to say this, but now I am going to say that that perhaps the president would be well, and if he accepts it, salamat. Kung hindi, salamat din, that we have a National Security Council meeting that we have not had for a long time. And that maybe the dialogue there will be a lot better. Because kung mag-iingay tayo dahil inuudyukan tayo ng media or iniidyukan tayo, because that's the business of media, to find out what are the emotions of the people, then magkakamali tayo. So I'm glad that if you say that we were getting equipment from the United States, that's great. We need more. But we should not feel entitlement because, like I said before, the policy of Japan, of Korea, of America, and everywhere, perpetual policy which enrich the country, strengthen the military. So we cannot be invaded or we cannot just be slapped around.
My last question, Mr. President, perhaps my previous question was not placed in the proper context, but again, it reverts to the notion of the president being the chief architect of foreign policy, and perhaps the notion of payment can be equated to other terms rather than compensation, perhaps in terms of the historic friendship between the Philippines and the United States. It can be equated to more people-to-people exchanges. It can be equated to more cultural exchanges, higher B1 visa grantees and percentages, not to mention the used military assets being given to us by the United States. So, Mr. President, I think there is really no quarrel here if we contextualize it as the president made his speech. In the middle of that speech came that word which is being asked now of by the media. Again, I repeat that phrase I mentioned: one man's vulgarity is another man's lyric. And I thank again the good gentleman from Zambales for stressing the need to strengthen the role of the Senate as a vital institution in our democracy. And I will end this questioning, Mr. President. I promised the good majority leader 4 questions. I probably will just listen later to the music. That's what friends are for, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, if I may just make a repost to the statement by my good friend, Senator Tolentino, I'd just like to point out that precisely the matter of compensation is not exactly objectionable. All I'm saying is maybe it's better to tone it down, quiet it down in the 4 corners of a table, wanting one another, you can talk about it. I even cited a precedent in Europe when the hands of President Roosevelt were tied and he could not give arms because of the laws on neutrality imposed upon him. And when he saw that the national interest of the United States has suddenly been threatened by the capture of France by the Germans. He knew that Britain, a former colony, and by the way, I'll tell you something, Americans never had much love for the British even at that time. And to a certain extent, even at this time, because they were a former colonial master. And therefore, at that time, acting on the national interest, Roosevelt figured, I do not approve of Hitler's antics, of what he's doing to other countries. And certainly, if he takes France, he can take Britain, and there will be no British Navy enough to support an invasion that will finally come to the United States, Mr. President. And that's why he asked for compensation. Call it political compensation, monetary compensation, land compensation. He asked them, I will give you the 50 ships, and he really gave more, not just the 50 destroyers. But, he said, I have a constituency that does not like us to go to war, and I would like to be able to justify that by saying, give us your military secrets that we can use for our military so that when we go to war, we have the same hardware and software, and give us some of the islands that they probably don't even need, if only as a symbolic gesture that one ally to another, kahit na ally, nagbabayaran. May transaksyon. Pero yung transaksyon na yun, mas malaki yung transformation, the transformation. And of course, you're correct when you cite that vulgarity is something, one man's vulgarity is one man's lyric. But you know what? I'd like to see more lyrics than vulgarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the speech of the gentleman from Zambales be referred to the Committee on Foreign Relations as primary committee and the Committee on National Defense as secondary committee. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, just for the record, our two colleagues, Senator Risa Ontiveros and Senator Cynthia Villar, would like to be made co-authors of Senate Bill number 2057. This is the vaccine measure. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
As well as Senator Kiko Pangilinan, Mr. President, as well.
All right, motion approved.
And I see also waiving Senator Manny Pacquiao, Mr. President, as co-author as well of the measure.
All right, also place that on record.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, next item on the agenda is the bill of our distinguished colleague from Bulacan. I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1513 and the committee report number 84, Mr. President. So moved.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are in the period of interpellation. May we recognize Senator Joel Villanueva to sponsor the measure.
To sponsor the measure, Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Mr. President, there are no, yes, just for the record, there are no other members who wish to interpellate the measure.
Yes,
Mr.
and
President.
just to put on record, Mr. President, distinguished majority floor leader, this representation had the chance to discuss this particular measure to a lot of members of the Senate, specifically our minority floor leader, Senator Frank Drilon and Senator Pia Cayetano. And we thank all the members of the Senate who introduced amendments, Mr. President. It used to be 4 to 5 pager bill. Now it's down to 2, Mr. President, 2-page measure, Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, let me do the proper motion is to close the period of interpellation.
Mr. President.
Before I do that, may we recognize Senator Pimentel, Mr. President.
Yes. Senator Rogelino Pimentel III is recognized.
Sorry for the late manifestation because I all of a sudden became interested in the measure if the sponsor will allow some interpellation or exchange so that we will get to know more about the measure.
Yes, gladly, Mr. President.
So, the title has not been changed, Mr. President, because you said the sponsor said that the contents have been changed from a 5-pager to a 2-pager.
The title, Mr. President, is the same, an act integrating labor education in the tertiary education curriculum, Mr. President.
So, what is actually the thrust of the measure, Mr. President? What about labor will we now introduce into the tertiary education curriculum?
Yes, Mr. President, part of the goal of this measure is to mandate all higher education institution to integrate labor education as part of an elective course, Mr. President.
So, what do we mean by labor education, Mr. President?
Well, labor education, Mr. President, refers to the teaching of basic knowledge on labor rights and other skills relating to negotiation, fostering smooth interpersonal relations in the workplace, and mechanisms to redress of grievances and other concerns, Mr. President.
And when it's an elective, sir, ilang units po yan, Mr. President? Because if we do we what principles in labor law do we expect our students in higher education to be familiar with after taking the course?
Well, Mr. President, let me put on record that there'll be no set of number of hours that that will be implemented, Mr. President, in tackling this particular topic. But we are suggesting and mandating our CHED to oversee and ensure that our higher education institution would be able to squeeze in, Mr. President, topics with regard to labor education as part of an elective course.
So the measure, Mr. President, does not enumerate in detail the subject matter to be
Yes, Mr. President, you're correct,
to be
Mr.
taught
President.
under labor education. So kasi sayang, sir, kung may mga importanteng concepts, 'di ba? Like for example, the right to form unions, yung occupational safety, even right to overtime pay, mga ganon. How can we make sure, Mr. President, that this will be part of the elective course to be offered under the measure?
Well, Mr. President, at this time, under the Philippine AIDS Prevention and Control Act of 1998, RA 8504, the Department of Education, Culture and Sports, CHED and TESDA shall integrate HIV education in public and private schools at intermediate grades, secondary, and tertiary levels, including non-formal and indigenous learning systems. What we wanted to do right now, Mr. President, is to ensure that this particular topic will be integrated, the labor education program, Mr. President, in the tertiary education curriculum.
Did the original bill contain the subjects, the particular topics to be taught?
Yes, Mr. President, the part of the original bill, Mr. President, but not this particular measure.
We took them out, Mr. President.
No, Mr. President. We took them out, but sorry, Mr. President, I'm a little. Yeah, because yung labor education is already defined in the law. This particular measure will be defining the labor integration, labor education, Mr. President, labor education, the definition of labor education, which is referring, Mr. President, to the teaching of basic knowledge on labor rights and other skills relating to negotiation, fostering smooth interpersonal relations in the workplace, and mechanisms for redress of grievances and other concerns.
Okay. So at least, Mr. President, there was an attempt to enumerate the aspects of labor as to be part of labor education. I could count three subject matters were enumerated, and then were followed by a general phrase and other matters. So is the sponsor satisfied with that, or is he open to, at the proper time, to expanding the enumeration of the subject matters of labor education?
Well, we're satisfied, Mr. President, because meron naman pong opportunity doon sa implementing rules and regulations to yung pagkakataon, Mr. President, to develop the module, Mr. President. And I think that's more than enough, Mr. President.
Okay, sir. If the sponsor is happy with how it is phrased, but what I fear is that we might be unhappy with the IRR or the modules, and then magrereklamo tayo. We have the chance now to be more specific with our law.
You want to be flexible, eh? And don't worry, Mr. President, because in this particular measure, we already asked DOLE to be part of this, so that together with our friends from the Commission on Higher Education, makukuha po natin yung gusto nating makuha
Laman.
dito sa particular measure na ito.
Yung laman ng labor education, sir. So may committee, sir. Is there a committee or a council which will now fill in the details?
Sa implementing guidelines, Mr. President, we are mandating the not just actually CHED and DOLE, but also TESDA, Mr. President, as we wanted also to take note of the contribution of the technical vocational education and training sector, Mr. President.
So I'm in full support, Mr. President, of this measure, which I believe is one example of outside of the box thinking. We're thinking of the more important, the more essential things in life that our students should know. So allow me to congratulate the sponsor. Sana, sir, gawa rin tayo ng bill, o gawa ako ng bill, and I hope you entertain it about teaching the Constitution. Pwede ba yon?
Sure, Mr. President, I'd gladly be part of it, Mr. President, and I'd like to thank the distinguished gentleman from Cagayan de Oro for having been very interested in a lot of the measures that we are treading upon in our committee. And again, just want to appreciate his thoughts and ideas with regard to this particular measure. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
So, congratulations, sir. You have my full support. Salamat po, Majority Leader and Mr. President and dear colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'd just like to add, Mr. President, that would be an excellent idea if Senator Pimentel can file a bill on educating our students on the Constitution. Sometimes a widely abused document by many sectors. It would be great that our students would learn about the importance of our Constitution. So thank you very much for that, Mr. President. I move that there are no other members who wish to interpolate the measure. I move that we close the period of interpolation.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, I move that we open the period of amendment and recognize our distinguished sponsor, Senator Joel Villanueva, for their
Senator
amendment.
Joel Villanueva is recognized for the period of amendments.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. Appreciate it. Thank you. Mr. President, on page 1 of SB 1513 under Committee Report number 84, delete lines 12 to 13. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On page 1, delete lines 19 to 21 and replace subsection C with the following. Subsection C, labor education refers to the teaching of basic knowledge on labor rights and other skills relating to negotiation, fostering smooth interpersonal relations in the workplace, and mechanisms for redress of grievances and other concerns. Renumber accordingly, Mr. President. So moved.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Page 2, Mr. President, line 2, delete the phrase "are mandated to" and replace with "shall." I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On the same page, delete lines 4 to 31, Mr. President, and replace with the new subsection, letter A, that shall read, "shall integrate labor education as part of an elective course," and then renumber accordingly. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On page 2, delete lines 36 to 47. And on page 3, delete lines 1 to 14 and replace section 5 with section 5. Integration of labor education in technical and vocational education and training curriculum. The Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, TESDA, in partnership with the Department of Labor and Employment, shall develop the appropriate modules of instructions and other relevant materials relating to labor education and shall encourage TVET institutions to integrate labor education in the TVET curriculum. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On page 3, line 16, delete amendment of the list of GE courses and in return, and the phrase "in the." That's it, Mr. President. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On the same page, delete lines 17 to 22. So the new section 6 shall read as Section 6, Curriculum Review. In all cases, the coverage and quality of offering labor education shall be included in any comprehensive curriculum review to be done by CHED and or TESDA. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Last but not the least, Mr. President, on page 3, line 27, after the word "with," insert the phrase "dole and." So it will read Section 7, Implementing Rules and Guidelines. Within 60 days from the effectivity of this act, CHED and TESDA, in consultation with DOLE and relative stakeholders, shall formulate the rules and regulations to effectively implement the provisions of this act. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
That's it, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you, dear colleagues.
Mr. President? Yes, thank you, Mr. President. If there are no other members who wish to propound amendments, I move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of amendments closed.
Thank you.
With that, Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading Senate Bill number 1513 under Committee Report number 84. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Senate Bill 1513 is hereby approved on second reading.
May we recognize our Minority Floor Leader, Mr. President, before we
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Before you suspend consideration of the measure, where I put into the record my congratulations to the author and sponsor of the measure, Senator Joel Villanueva. As a former Secretary of Labor and a labor practitioner before I joined the Senate, Mr. President, I do appreciate the value of the bill and the ideas that were put into it. I must confess that initially we had reservations about the clash of the bill with the concept of academic freedom, because then if we recall, the academic freedom would abhor the state dictating upon the schools and educational system what subjects to teach. And a good compromise was incorporated by and adopted by the sponsor by putting it as by putting labor education as an elective. In other words, it is now the choice of the student whether or not to take labor education, and the state does not dictate upon the student or the academic. And it is in that regard, and it is in that context that the idea of Senator Coco Pimentel about including the Constitution can also be adopted along the line of an elective in constitutional in the Constitution, so that is a good compromise adopted by the good sponsor, and I congratulate him for finding a proposal that can meet the objections on interference with academic freedom, and at the same time push the concept of labor education to our youth, because this is critical when they join the labor force, that they know exactly what the rights under the law would be, and the need for them to have an harmonious relationship with the employer. So it is in that sense that I have cast an affirmative vote on the approval and second reading of this measure, and once again congratulate and commend our good chairman of the Committee on Labor for this important legislation. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Mr. President, if I may.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. This humble representation is just still in awe listening to our minority floor leader, the guru of gurus of this August chamber. When I became a member of the Senate, I have been thanking God for having him here, Mr. President, especially in the Committee on Labor. And I would just like to put on record my sincerest and deepest appreciation to his contribution, Mr. President, not only to this August chamber, but personally, Mr. President. I have been learning a lot from him, and I expect to learn from him all the more in the coming days. And again, also would like to thank our inspirational leader of the Senate, Senate President Tito Soto, our majority floor leader, our former Senate President, our bar top notcher, Senator Coco Pimentel, our colleagues for helping us out in this particular measure, which is, for me, is very important, Mr. President. Indeed, we need this labor education in our schools to equip both workers and employers with the right labor information, so that they will become better citizens, better partners in attaining and maintaining harmonious labor management relationships. Our curriculum, Mr. President, should help our future workers and help our future employers make deeper and fuller understanding of their labor rights and responsibilities. And that's why the passage of this bill is a step towards that direction. Muli, Mr. President, Ginoong Pangulo, ang paglalagay po ng labor education sa mga standards ng CHED at sa mga training regulations din po ng TESDA ay magagarantiya na sa ating mga graduates ay employment ready sila, well equipped with technical skills and labor skills. Again, my sincerest thanks and gratitude to all the members of the Senate. Mabuhay ang Senado. God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Leader. Yes.
Before we suspend consideration, I would be honored if the sponsor accepts me as a co-author of the measure as well.
I will be honored, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you. The honor is all mine. Thank you very much, Mr. President. With that, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1513.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is suspended.
Mr. President, the last item of the agenda, if it is all right with the presiding officer or Senate President, if we can tackle it and probably just give a time limit of 7 p.m. as I know the good gentlemen on the floor are busy. If it's all right, can we still tackle Senate Bill number 1947, Mr. President, for interpellation?
Yes.
That is the judicial marshals. I know you're also a principal author of this measure.
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1947. Mr. President, recognize the sponsor, Senator Richard Gordon, and to interpellate our distinguished colleague, Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan, if he's available. He is. There you go. Thank you, Mr. President. I so move.
All right. The sponsor is recognized, Senator Richard Gordon, and to interpellate, Senator Francis Pangilinan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. May we know if the good gentleman from Zambales distinguished colleague in the Senate is willing to yield to a number of questions.
Willingly to the esteemed member of the Senate and my fraternity brother, Kiko Pangilinan.
Thank you to my senior brother in the Upsilon.
For the record, Mr. President, both of them are Upsilonians, so we can all go home already.
We will consider that after we listen to them.
That's only because Sigma Rons have a difficult time understanding the intelligence of the Upsilonians.
The language and the intelligence. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, distinguished sponsor. Before we proceed with our interpellation, we would like to place on record that we support the need for us to address the what I call a crisis facing our judicial system as well as our judiciary. This crisis must be met with precisely bold, aggressive measures to be able to deal with it. As I understand, since as of November 2020, 53 lawyers, including 8 judges and 10 prosecutors, have been killed since July 2016. And this is really a serious matter in terms of respect for the rule of law in this country. May we know, and I've come to understand, and if my data is correct, that only 10% of cases involving 31 judges since 1999 have been resolved. If that is correct, may we know what were the obstacles and hindrances? Why only 10% of the 31 judges who have been killed since 1999 to merit precisely this intervention, this measure?
Well, I'm aware, Mr. President, that there are a few cases, hardly a few cases have been solved. In fact, but I will try to get that precise information. I had it somewhere, and I can't seem to find it right now. But certainly, if you give us the time, I can get back to you later on that, on the specific information, Mr. President.
Yes, and based on the hearings and your own take on the hearings and the resource persons, what were the hindrances that resulted in unresolved cases involving judges, Mr. President?
Mr. President, I think I have the answer. You're correct. There are only 10% of those killings have been solved. And the hindrances, to answer your follow-up question, has been the lack of witnesses, or for that matter, the use of vehicles like motorcycles that get away with it. And, well, it would appear that there have been tremendous I won't call it courage, but simple crassness and impunity in the killing. Hindi na natatakot yung mga pumapatay, pati ng whistle. And that is why, like I said, I keep repeating this even in my own staff, whose father had an attempt on his life in 2 separate provinces. One in Tuguegarao and the other one in Quezon City. There were 2 attempts on his life until they got him on the 2nd attempt. So talagang sa akin, lack of prevention and the fact there is no follow-up that would come in. The police are probably too very busy to look at other things. And certainly, there's no real pursuit. It goes into a cold case file and it disappears.
Yes.
That's why with the judicial marshals, there will be some focus on it.
Yes.
And speed.
Yes, thank you. We were listening to the previous interpellation, and we noted that this judiciary marshal bill is up to a certain extent patterned after the U.S. Marshals Is that not right?
That's correct.
Yes. I think a distinction, however, or a difference with this measure and the U.S. Marshals would be that the U.S. Marshals is under the Executive Department, if I'm not mistaken.
The Department of Justice.
That right, which is the Executive Department. And this Judiciary Marshals is under the Legislative Department. So there is a difference. Then, in other words, one is under the Executive Branch, the U.S. Marshals, while ours, the proposal is that it will be with the Judicial Branch.
Yes, it has come to a point, Mr. President, that the Senate colleague, that many judges have even asked to arm themselves. The Department of Justice in this country runs the NBI, and the NBI ought to be on top of it, but apparently even they cannot handle it. So we figured that there would be more focus, and if it's handled by the Supreme Court, then under the Supreme Court, then Supreme Court will certainly be overprotective of the judges because it is a slap on the face of Lady Justice every time a judge is killed. Seems that there's no respect but contempt to judges, Your Honor.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. Would the good sponsor agree with me that law enforcement is primarily a executive power?
As a general rule, yes, sir, I will. As a general rule, there are instances where, for example, the Secret Service in the United States are also Treasury agents. They serve as Treasury agents, seizing smuggle or counterfeit money, etc.
Yes.
There are specialist agencies also operating. But here, in the case of the judicial marshals, they're essentially security, not law enforcement.
Yes. So their primary function would be security.
To prevent it from being attacked.
Yes.
To put order in the courts, to make sure that they have a file to allow them to see, study what are the possible threat and be able to have a threat analysis.
Yes.
On a particular judge who may be handling very sensitive cases.
Yes, that is I think a key feature that will help us better understand precisely what the measures of priority or focus would be. Because if it's securing our judges and justices, then we see that as one of the functions precisely that should be undertaken by the judiciary to protect their own. It becomes a bit, a bit blurred when other law enforcement functions are given to the judicial marshals, and therefore the issue of separation of powers would come in. But I understand, and based on the interpellations of Senator Pimentel and the response of the good sponsor, because if I understand it correctly, Senator Pimentel was also concerned about some of the powers that was being given under Section 4, broader powers, including the power to arrest, the power to investigate judges for other criminal acts. But if I understand it correctly, the good sponsor said that he is willing to look at possible amendments, proposed amendments to be able to better define or come up with a better definition of the functions and the powers of the judicial marshal.
Let me expand a little bit on that, and I go by what I said. Obviously, I never think that we have the franchise on correctness, and that's why I listen with respect to all our colleagues, no matter who it may be, so that we can improve the law. I look at it from that point of view. In this matter, with regard to your question, the judiciary marshals are not law enforcement. They are security. Okay. And all, they are complementary to a certain situation that may arise. and if they're in the area, they will complement. If they're asked for assistance, provided they provide proper identification, and also augmentation of law enforcement, like something is happening. But they're not there to conduct arrests or conduct investigations. It's purely the protection of the courts and the judges and the justices.
Thank you for that clarification. The Section 4, for example, provides for a power that pertains to witnesses. Earlier, we said that many of the cases involving judges did not progress precisely because of lack of witnesses. If I'm not mistaken, in one of the committee hearings, the CIDG manifested that cases were dismissed because of the failure of witnesses to appear during the trial. And the bill proposes to provide security to witnesses. Perhaps we should be able to clearly define the powers in relation to or in conjunction with the Witness Protection Program and the Republic Act. If I'm not mistaken, that's Republic Act 6981, the Witness Protection Program measure, which is under the Department of Justice. So there has to be some clear delineation between the Witness Protection Program law and, of course, the securing of witnesses by the judicial marshals. Distinguished ones.
Your Honor, you're correct. The primary responsibility is the Department of Justice for the Witness Protection Program. But when it comes to judges, escorting the witnesses and making sure that they arrive, that would be the primary function of the judiciary marshals. Of course, they can also ask help from the NBI or other agencies, but the primary function would be theirs.
Yes. Because, and just to also put on record, Section 4, for example, of the Republic Act 6981, the Witness Protection Program law, provides for, and this is for the legislative branch, witnesses in legislative hearings. Of course, what happens here is that we have in the Senate hearings wherein we, especially the Blue Ribbon Committee, wherein we can actually provide immunity for as long as this is approved by the Senate President, or in the case of the House of Representatives, the Speaker, and place them under the Witness Protection Program. Perhaps at the right time, we can craft some provision that will, again, clearly distinguish or will define, the Witness Protection Program law and the protection of witnesses by the judiciary marshal, so that we can reconcile both laws.
That would be most acceptable and ideal, Mr. President, and I'm ready to accept. And we're also trying to look for language that will say that, clearly defining what the role of each agency will be.
Yes, Mr. President, on the matter of some of the other powers, there is the power to, again, this was clarified earlier, but to conduct investigations concerning allegations of irregularities, including graft and corruption committed by justices. My concern here, Mr. President, is that how do we now reconcile this with the powers of the Ombudsman, the Department of Justice, with respect to investigations, number one, and number two, will the judicial marshals be empowered to file cases and prosecute on the basis of the investigation and the findings involving judges and justices, Mr. President, whether it is on issues of corruption or on issues of security, Mr. President?
Well, Mr. President, there will be no overlapping of functions with the Office of the Ombudsman in conducting investigations concerning allegations of irregularities, including graft and corruption committed by justices, judges, court officials, and personnel. The marshals and the Ombudsman will be complementing each other. In the landmark case of Judge Maceda versus Ombudsman Vasquez, 22 April 1993, the court and bank held that under the doctrine of separation of powers, the Ombudsman cannot investigate judges and court personnel. Section 6, Article 8 of the Constitution provides that it is the Supreme Court which has the administrative supervision over all judges and court personnel, Mr. President. So I see no problems with that. Now, on the matter of filing cases, Mr. President, I see no reason properly guided by the court administration that they can prepare the case, but the case will have to be prosecuted either by the Department of Justice or by the Ombudsman after the Supreme Court has already conducted the investigation through the judiciary marshals.
Which therefore precisely supports the earlier manifestation of the good sponsor that their primary jurisdiction or their primary power is to secure, and the others would be augmentation or support.
That's correct, sir.
Yes, thank you. In the meantime, my understanding would be that if there are pending cases being investigated by the NBI, this will continue.
Yes, Your Honor.
This will not be turned over or transferred to, or
I think the better policy is not to change horses in the middle of the stream, so that this will be prospective.
Yes. In terms of, Mr. President, just a step backwards, who are entitled to security and who are entitled to the support from the judicial marshals? Would former members of the Supreme Court or justices of the Court of Appeals, for example, the case of Judge or Justice Pizarro, would that fall under this? He was no longer a judge. He was no longer in the Supreme.
Justice, he was the Justice of the Court of Appeals. Yeah.
Yes, but retired, if I'm not mistaken.
He was dismembered. His body was dismembered.
Yes. Would a retired justice, for example, be covered? And would this judicial marshal bill cover those who have already retired from a judiciary?
With proper representation, Mr. President, only the Supreme Court can say you will be assigned to this retired justice or to this judge, so that I guess to the court administrator and the head of the judiciary marshals will have to follow the Supreme Court on the matter.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. President. Earlier we mentioned that since November 23, as of November 23, rather 2020, 53 lawyers have been killed. 8 of them judges. In other words, there were more lawyers than judges killed. There is jurisprudence that says that that lawyers are officers of the court. Would lawyers, if their cases, for example, or if they were killed, and it can be established that their killings were case-related or pending court cases related, will they also be covered by the judicial marshal's measure, for example? Hypothetically, if a lawyer is being threatened, can he's receiving death threats, or there has been an attempted assassination on himself. Can he go to the Supreme Court and perhaps request and secure services of this judicial marshal for his protection?
As a general rule, Mr. Distinguished colleague, he will not be covered, and he can request for protection from the police or the NBI. But if there is really approximate, clear and present danger that for a while he can ask the Supreme Court for permission. He can do that. Anybody can ask the Supreme Court for permission, and it will be up to the Supreme Court to act on precedent on whether he would be given protection. But I'm sure he will. My take on that is that he will have to go to law enforcement, which is the PNP or the NBI.
And the same goes for prosecutors, I assume, because we have had 10 prosecutors killed since 2016. The latest one was one of the prosecutors in Manila, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct, Your Honor. That will be a law enforcement case strictly, and this will really be for judges and witnesses, court personnel, law enforcement, and law enforcement will have to do the rest, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, right now, if I'm not mistaken, the current protocol for justices and judges who require additional security, this is really just that they go to the PNP or the NBI. Is that not correct?
That's correct, sir. That's correct.
Yes, yes. Thank you. And therefore, with this measure, then they can have precisely better security to address these threats.
You know, distinguished colleagues, our members of this the Senate, people have become impervious. They're not afraid. Just yesterday, I believe the former mayor of Cagayan was killed, and even a lady with her, her secretary was killed. I don't know if there's a policeman involved, but also when ambushes are made, policemen are not necessarily bulletproof. They're part and parcel of people who are being killed. I don't know whether you might call that friendly fire. No, not friendly fire, but incidents of the principal objective and sorry ka na lang kung naandyan ka. But to my mind, for the Supreme Court, for the judiciary, we must send a very, very strong message that there will be a specialized force to really go after people who will attack judges and who will attack their families and the court, Mr. President. Yes,
we noticed that the initial appropriation is only 50 million. That is small, considering that you do have thousands of judges and justices. Is that not right? Well, those are startup funds, essentially, Mr. President, and I'm sure the Supreme Court will ask us to augment their funds because the funds from this will come from the Supreme Court's request for budget allocation. Do we have information regarding how many personnel will the judicial marshals require if they are fully functional and addressing the security concerns of the judiciary? Initially, they will hire 100, but we're talking about in full complement 300, Mr. President. So a security contingent of around 300 judicial marshals. Like 3 battalions, Your Honor, different units. That's just an estimate, Mr. President, a forecast, if you will. Yes. But I'm sure if the judiciary marshals can show their effectiveness, I hope they'll be like the Mounties of Canada, who always get their man, even in a wide territory with very few assets and human resources. They're able to get their men. But this must be inculcated in the training that they must always get their man. Do you recall? I'm sure we all recall during the early days when you killed a policeman in Manila, you're dead meat. I mean, now they're no longer afraid. An NBI agent is killed. They're no longer afraid of these instances, and that is why the judiciary must protect themselves and make sure that they have a very skillful and very well-funded, very well-trained protectors in the form of judiciary marshals. Yes, the 300 full staff complement would, Section 4A of the measure provides that protection would include court officials, apart from judges and justices, and personnel, and their families, Mr. President. So that's perhaps maybe we can craft some language to make sure that there is no abuse to this. Baka ang mangyari dyan maging mga bodyguard pati nung misis, nung anak, etc.
That will have to be clarified. They're not bodyguards, Mr. President.
Yes.
They're not going to be aides of the judges.
That is right.
They're there to protect them, Mr. President. That's a very good point you just made, and we will put language to that effect. But when you consider there are 2,600 courts, Mr. President, can imagine that if these people are threatened, they really have to have a special core of people who can make sure that they pay dearly for what they do. So that's my prayer. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. On another section, there is to be established a Judicial Marshal Academy, which shall be responsible for the recruitment, training, and development of all judicial marshals and personnel, among others. We do have an existing Philippine Judicial Academy. Perhaps we can probably amend or propose some amendments that rather than establish a separate Judicial Marshal Academy, that the PhilJA will create the necessary modules or training so that it's still obviously under the Supreme Court in the judicial branch.
On this sense, I hate to disagree with my fraternity brother.
Okay. Well,
judge to become a good judge, as we all know, and the purpose is different. Here they will have in the marshals, they will have legal training, defensive. They can attend perhaps some courses there. They will have defensive tactics, driver training, courtroom evidence and procedure, court security, office survival, search and seizure, protective service training, firearms training, physical conditioning, first aid, search and restraint, computer training, building entry and search, high threat trials, and surveillance. That's a lot because these are the things that, among others, that they need to train for and understand and be second nature to them because nobody is going to invite somebody to have himself assassinated. So it's important that they get trained. In the Judicial Academy, well, I'm sure you'll agree with me that their forte would be parang almost like a bar review all over again and to see whether this training school for justices, judges, court personnel, and lawyers and aspirants to the judicial post are really focused. Here, this one is focused now on protection, the protection of the judges. I'm sorry I have to go through that long reply.
We understand, and we thank you for that clarification. I think this was raised earlier by in a previous interpellation by Senator Coco. We just wanted it clarified. This is on the constitutional provision on one police force, because the bill empowers the Office of the Judicial Marshals to make arrests, searches, and seizures in relation to the functions of the Office of the Judicial Marshal, and in accordance with the Constitution. May this be clarified? Would this not be in a violation of the establishment and maintenance of one police force, civilian in character and national in scope?
My answer to that, Your Honor, is that this is not a law enforcement. It's not a police force. This is a security force. We have that in Subic. They have that in Clark. They can make arrests in Subic, but they have to turn over to the police for the continuation of the disposition of the case. This is the same nature, Mr. President. And of course, the only police act of shooting somebody who's about to shoot somebody is something that there's there. But on a sidebar, Mr. President, I really have never approved of one police force in this country. And that really hamstrings many things. But there's a constitution. I have to follow it, and I'd like to assure our colleagues here They're not replacing the PNP. They are not superseding the PNP. They have their core functions, which exclusive to them, and they're merely augmentation and complementation.
Thank you for that clarification that this is to augment and complement, but not to strip or remove or overlap with the primary jurisdiction of one police force. Thank you for that clarification. Just taking a step back on the matter of investigations, Mr. President, the power of the judiciary marshals to conduct investigations, would this be limited to administrative cases involving judges, or will it also extend to criminal cases?
This would be strictly covering administrative provisions, Mr. President, administrative regulations. But if it blossoms into a criminal offense that has been committed, I would say that they would be empowered to, provided that it is a judge or a personnel of the court that they're investigating that has committed a criminal offense. In which case, again, say the powers in D says to conduct investigations concerning allegations of irregularities, including graft and corruption. Graft and corruptions cases are criminal offenses, Mr. President. And I would imagine that they would include those criminal offenses.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. On Section 4K, there is this phrase that they can make arrests, searches, and seizures in relation to the functions of its office. Could we
again, Mr. President?
Go ahead. I'd like to have that clarified. May we ask what this phrase covers, or what does this mean in relation to the functions of the office of the judiciary? So they will make arrests, but it has to be in relation to their functions. Is that not right?
That's correct. For example, they could be in hot pursuit, and they're chasing after somebody, and that they would have to do so. Or, for example, they will need to issue a subpoena for somebody that they're investigating in order to find out evidence, Mr. President. Or for that matter, similar to Section 5, Rule 113. And this is really more of an exception, although he's simply under his mandate that he is strictly for the protection of judges. I would tend to allow him that when a crime, which is allowed any citizen anyway, a peace officer or private person may, without a warrant, arrest a person. A, when in his presence, a person to be arrested is committed is actually committing or is attempting to commit an offense. B, when an offense has just been committed and he has probable cause to believe, based on personal knowledge of facts or circumstances, that the person to be arrested has committed it. And when the person to be arrested is a prisoner, and that is something really on their line, who has escaped from the penal establishment or place where he is serving final judgment or is temporarily confined while his case is pending or has escaped while being transferred from one confinement to another. I'm sure you will recall the movie The Fugitive, starring Harrison Ford, who was playing a doctor that was escaping for having murdered his wife, when in fact it wasn't him. And the federal marshal there was the classmate of Vice President Gore. I forget his name right now, but he's a very good character actor. And that was, again, another thing that picked up.
Tommy Lee Jones.
When a prisoner, yes, Tommy Lee Jones, when a prisoner escaped from a penal establishment, which is, of course, they cannot go out without the permission of the court. If they do, then that becomes part and parcel of what they can do to augment, to complement, and even directly to arrest.
Thank you for that clarification. At the proper time, Mr. President, I am concerned about the broadness of the power in relation to the functions of its office, considering this is arrests, searches, and seizures. would the good sponsor be willing to consider perhaps amendments to further define and enumerate perhaps what is covered in terms of these functions of his office?
The gentleman need not ask. Your wish is my command. Of course, I'm open to all these things that can improve the law.
Thank you. With that, I have no other questions, Mr. President. Perhaps during the period of amendments, we might raise some additional clarificatory questions, but we would like to thank the good sponsor, our senior brother in the fraternity, for this opportunity to interpolate him and raise these questions. Maraming salamat to the distinguished sponsor. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader.
I should be the one to thank you for enlightening my good friend Senator Jolon, who is about to make another comment.
All right, the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, a member has reserved to interpolate on the measure, but is not yet ready to interpolate today, and so I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1947. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. So suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, February 17, 2021. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. The session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, February 17, 2021.
Thank you.